Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Ignite the Financial Model. Our instructor today is running a little late. The regional leadership meeting is going a little overtime, but he should be here within the next 3 or 4 minutes. Does anyone have any questions about anything before we start?
No questions. I just hope everybody had a good weekend.
Halfway. We had sun one day and I had my entire family in town, and then it rained out the next day. Thankfully, they all left early in the morning.
Yeah, Saturday was the perfect summer day for New England.
Oh, yeah.
And the Sunday was, a little moist. I don't know where you are, but we have a lot of fog in the Portland area.
Oh, I'm down in Narragansett, Rhode Island.
So I have a question.
Yes, Nina.
I need an agent that covers, and I have no idea really where this is, the Goshen area.
Goshen. Is that Wisconsin?
No, it's in Massachusetts, but
Oh.
it's way out there.
What big city is it near in relation to?
I don't know. Is it Williams? What is that? Williamstown or Williams?
Just if you go to kw.com, log into the intranet, and then just type in market centers in central Massachusetts.
Okay.
It's probably serviced out of Worcester.
Okay.
But there
Either
could
Worcester or Western Mass, because I'm in Western Mass and it's like right on the border. Try the Northampton office for Keller Williams. They'll know. It's not that far from there, Williamstown.
Okay. Yeah, I think Northampton is one of the towns that he mentioned. So okay.
Yeah, it's not that far from there. I'm about 15 miles from Northampton, and that's probably Goshen's on the other side of that.
Okay. Do you, Arthur, know any agents in that market center that?
No, not offhand. I just started and I'm out of the Long Meadow office, not the Northampton office.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Okay.
your best bet is just to call the team leader there, and tell her what you're looking for, explain the client and the areas they're interested in, and he or she will make a couple of recommendations to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the group?
I'm writing and rewriting my value proposition, and I'm finding it is not as easy as I thought it might be, but we're on about the third or fourth rendition right now.
I'm outside enjoying the weather, and the garbage truck just pulled up, so I have to mute myself for a minute. Okay, it's gone. What was your question, Dave?
I'm writing the value proposition or rewriting it.
Yep.
Probably on the third or fourth rendition as we go.
You're probably a third of the way there.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it's something that you're gonna tweak it over time as you get more and more involved in it. I rewrote mine about 7 times, and I finally got it to be like a half a page, and then I had to cut it down to a few lines. So don't get frustrated. Oop, here he comes again. Don't get frustrated if you don't get the thing written in 30 seconds. Sheena Guzman. I need you to drop your email address in the chat so I can send you those things for this afternoon.
Okay, will do.
Okay, thanks. So has everyone been doing all the assignments every week that you're getting from this class?
I think
And the
all
room goes,
might be a
the room goes
stretch.
silent. You know, some of them may seem really stupid, but they're designed to help you develop better habits and to get you moving along. And if you think these are a little crazy and tough, where do you take bold? Okay, Matt was supposed to be here by now. I guess the meeting is really going hot and heavy. Okay, good.
What are we talking about today?
Today's the financial.
Oh, basics.
Yeah. And for those of you that are new agents, pay very close attention, because at the end of the year, when you're doing your taxes, the government doesn't care that you didn't understand you were supposed to save some money to pay your taxes. They want their pound of flesh, and they will get it.
That's it. No excuses.
Yep.
Where are you from, Steve?
I'm from Narragansett, Rhode Island.
Oh, I just I think I have a sale there in Warwick Neck last night. I'm waiting for them to respond. Yep,
Which
on
market
Millard Avenue in Warwick Neck.
Which market center are you with?
Keller Williams Leading Edge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in Lincoln.
I'm with Coastal out of Wakefield.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, beautiful property out there.
Oh, crazy. But it's crazy. I mean, it used to be if a house was on the market for like a month, you'd say, gee, what's wrong with the place? And now if it's 5 days, it's like, oh boy, that must be a dump. It's not selling.
Wow.
In fact, I submitted an offer, a cash offer on a condominium in Narragansett on Thursday at about 35,000 over asking.
Wow.
And we were outbid by $20,000.
Wow.
But it's, you know, it's the New York money. They come in and they're like 500,000. That's my lunch bill, you know?
Yep, the cash people.
Yeah. And they're just scooping up everything.
Yep.
We got one.
I don't mind selling property to them, but you know, on the other hand, I feel bad because they're pricing everyone else out of the market.
Exactly. And that's not right, I think, personally. Not
How
fair.
long will the New York money continue to hold on to these properties as we go to post-pandemic part 2, and then they'll put them back on the market?
In the past, it used to be they'd hold on to the property for like 3 or 4 years and then usually sell it. but what I've been seeing for the past year, and it's happened with friends of mine that were in the New York area, they discovered that they did not have to be sitting in the office anymore. My roommate from college was a benefits consultant for small businesses, and his wife is from Rhode Island. He's not, but she always wanted to get a beach house here, and he always said, we just don't. Whatever the time, I have to be in the office. She's a college professor, and last June he called me up and he said, I haven't been in the office in 3 months. Business is better than ever, and nobody knows I'm not there. And a lot of people are making that discovery that they can work from home, as well or even better in most cases than they did in the office, because they're not getting the stupid interruptions. If someone's having an issue, they'll call them, but they don't have the person walking by sticking their head in the office saying, "Hey, it's sunny out, let's go get a cup of coffee." Or, gee, just something going on. And so they're taking advantage of it. New England offers them space. You can buy a house, and even if you only use it for, the weekends or something, you can buy it relatively inexpensively for New York prices. It's like, now Rhode Island is very popular because it's closer than the Hamptons to New York City, and the property is like a third the price.
Right, that's right.
And I mean, I have people that are buying beach houses that are 20 miles. They're almost on the Connecticut border. They're 20 miles inland. And I'm like, you can't call that a beach house. There's no beach. And like, oh, the beach is only 20 miles away versus 60 miles through New Jersey.
So
Well, looks like Matt has joined us.
I am here. I apologize, everybody. So I had a meeting prior to this that I knew was going to run right up till 9, but then I had a tech issue getting in. So I am here now. I apologize, and thank you all for being gracious and waiting.
Did I block you out of the room?
No, I don't think so. It was just they had added this to my calendar and included every link resource you could possibly need, with the exception of the instructor login link. So that was the challenge. So give me.
Well, we know who didn't do their homework last night.
There you go. All right. So give me a moment here so I can get the right slides up, and we will get rolling. All right, so before we dive into slides, I would love to just hear from the group, because this is my first opportunity to meet all of you. I would love to just hear some ahas, or some ahas that you've gotten from Ignite so far, some wins, or even if you have like a struggle that you want to share that you would benefit from some coaching around, something maybe you're running into that's been a barrier or hurdle from you. So ahas, wins, or challenges that we can coach to before we dive into the content. And by the way, let me preface this. We are all realtors, right? So a huge asset of being a successful realtor is our ability to engage with human beings in conversation. And I get really, really weird when I talk to people and they say nothing back to me, right? I have this conversation with my daughters all the time. I have to explain to them, this is how this works. I just said something to you. Now you actually respond back to me. I know you guys are not children, but I want to encourage everyone to not be shy, use your voices, engage in conversation. So don't make me like pick on people or do all those things. You know, the more we engage, the more we're all going to get out of this. So don't be shy, unmute yourselves, share with me some wins, some ahas, or some struggles.
As a father of 3 daughters, how old are your daughters?
Oh my gosh. So I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old.
Oh, yeah, you're going to have some interesting years in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They've probably already started.
Yes, I was going to say I'm experiencing my first shift in going from being my oldest daughter and I have been like Batman and Robin my whole life. And all of a sudden she doesn't think Batman's so cool anymore. So it's an interesting transition, but she's awesome. They're both awesome. I got 2 great kids, but it is an interesting thing living through those emotional developmental stages with your children. Definitely.
It's interesting how much you will learn between now and the time they're 25.
Yeah. Patience will be one of them. All right. So enough about me and my girls. Let's share some real estate ahas and challenges.
Well, my aha, I had to leave the realtor business for a few years as I was battling head and neck cancer, and I'm cancer free now. And the fatigue that comes after all the radiation, but I'm back. I took Ignite 1.0, and I can say that Ignite 2.0 is head and shoulders above the previous Ignite.
Awesome. And if I could dig a little deeper, what specifically have you gotten value out of that makes you make that statement?
I like the idea that we're dealing with a number of different market centers in different states. So you get, well, the state of Massachusetts has this rule. I'm up in Maine. We don't have that rule, but I'm learning about, how other states are navigating this. I like having more people involved. Before it was in a classroom with maybe 25 people. I think, and we really didn't break out into breakout rooms like we do now. So I like this Zoom event.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just hit on something, and I'm sure previous instructors have hopefully driven this home. One of the opportunities I believe in doing it this way and bringing different people from different markets, it's a huge opportunity to build your peer relationships and in turn build your referral relationships, right? Every single person on this call is an opportunity to have a peer relationship and a referral relationship. So I would strongly encourage, lean into the Facebook group, be a part of that group actively, friend the people who are on these calls so that you can start to get to know them as a human being and build those relationships. Because at the end of the day, it's like, even when we go to big events, like I've always said, and most people will say, when you go to mega camp, when you go to family reunion, the content is phenomenal, but everything that happens in between is equally valuable, if not more, right? The relationships you have, the conversations you have afterwards, the referral network that you build, all of those things are a huge, huge value. So you've got an opportunity to do that here. So make sure you lean into it. David, I appreciate the input. Who else?
I've got an aha to share. This is I've been a Keller Williams agent since 2010. This is probably my 10th Ignite class and probably the 5th one that I've been teaching. And I learned I like taking it because you always learn something new. For those of you that were in the Rhonda Miesenborg's class back at the second class of this series, one of the people that dropped in talked about doing what was called a reverse 100. I had talked about how if you're afraid of making phone calls, do the bold 100 challenge. It will eliminate that fear from your body. And the gentleman, he was one of the, I'm not sure if he was from Maine or New Hampshire, spoke about what he called the reverse 100, reverse bold 100. He bought a ring. He bought a ring camera and posted an ad on Facebook saying, "Give me a ring for a chance at a ring." And he had people calling him so that he could talk to them about real estate. And Rhonda and I both wrote that thing down, and I picked up my new Ring doorbell on Saturday, and we'll be posting it tomorrow.
Yeah. So I love that too, right? It's so creativity. So
Yeah,
there's a couple.
and great idea sharing. You know, you someone thinks of something and it sets you off on, hey, wait a second, I can do it this way and achieve my goals.
Yeah, yeah. So there's two things I love about that. One is I remember being a part of the very first Bold, and I was a team leader at the time. And they challenged people to do the Bold 100, which for anyone who doesn't know, that's to have 100 real estate conversations in a day. So when you go to Bold, the goal is to have 100 real estate conversations in a week. And then they will challenge you and say, who's willing to commit to having 100 real estate conversations in a single day? Now, here I am as a team leader sitting in that room going, oh, I'm going to be really transparent, going, oh, shoot. Speed of the leader, speed of the pack, right? I'm pretty sure I don't have a choice but to stand up and say, I'll do that. So I did. So I'll take that challenge. Here's what was really interesting. During that day, you realize how many opportunities you have to engage with people that you just don't take. Right. And here's the one that slapped me in the face and not only made me realize how many opportunities you miss in a day to potentially get business, but also how many opportunities you miss in a day just to be human and build relationships by slowing down a hair and engaging with the people who are all around you. And the one that slapped me in the face is I used to leave my house at the exact same time every day. This is not a model for healthy living, but I would stop at Dunkin' Donuts and I would get my coffee and the same breakfast sandwich every single morning. I would arrive at that Dunkin' Donuts within a 2 to 3 minute window every single morning. So they got to know me to the degree that when I got there, my coffee and my food was just sitting there and I would just walk in and pay for it. I never asked them to do that. They just got to know this guy's going to show up at this time and this is what he eats. And it was funny, they were doing it for so long that I actually wanted to change my order, but I felt bad because it was always sitting there when I got there. So I just kept eating the same thing. But that day that I did that Bold 100, I realized how many of those people that I saw every morning who had my food and my coffee waiting for me, who I had never actually engaged in a real conversation with. Every day I saw them and it was hello, thank you, and right, that was it. Like I never slowed down a little bit while they were ringing me out just to have a conversation with them. And of course, in that day, my brain was wired that every single human being I see, I need to engage in a conversation with because I have to have 100 real estate conversations today. And that was just the first slap in the face. Here's people that I see and they serve me every day. And I've never slowed down just to get to know them a tiny bit, right? And I'm not saying pull up a chair and hang out at the counter at Dunkin' Donuts, but just engage in a real conversation while we're together in that same space. So anyway, so I love that piece. The other thing is there's a million ways to be successful in this business. And here's how somebody put it to me once is there's an OP who I know who created a class back in the day when he was a team leader that he called disguising lead generation. And it was DISC, disguising. So those of you who know the DISC profiles, the D, the I, the S, the C, and what he did is he broke down different lead generations into the categories of whether you're a D, an I, or an S, or a C, and which ones are going to be most natural to you, right? So there's an interesting thing in that I do believe to be successful in anything, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Yet there's also a huge value into leaning into what you're naturally good at, right? So like for me, as an example, when I was an agent, I had very high D. And I started selling real estate in a place where I knew nobody. So I was a lead gen guy. Like I made phone calls. I called expireds, I door knocked FSBOs, I made business to business calls to introduce myself and create a network of business people that I could leverage to serve my clients and in turn get referrals from and give referrals to. So I was very much a cold caller. But that was a combination of A, necessity. I didn't know anybody, so I had to do it. And B, that's my personality. What's the shortest path to where I am to where I want to go? Yet there's a lot of people who throw up in their mouth when they think about making cold calls. The really weird thing, you know what I was most fearful of? The hardest thing to get me to do as a new agent? I would cold call FSBOs. I would cold call business owners. I would door knock FSBOs. You know what I was terrified of? Somebody guess.
Calling family and friends.
No, spiders.
Oh,
No, I'm kidding. It was calling family and friends. Yes, that was terrifying for me. Like the idea of calling somebody that I have a relationship with solely for the purpose of having a business conversation, for me at that time felt disingenuous, and I was wicked uncomfortable with it. Wicked uncomfortable with it. I would call FSBOs all day. I would call expireds all day. I'd call business to business all day. Good with that. Like I was nervous in the beginning. My palms would sweat and I would stutter a little as I was getting comfortable with it and learning scripts, but I got comfortable quickly with it. But that was my fear, right? Now, somebody else might feel the complete opposite. The idea of calling an expired is terrifying, but why wouldn't I be comfortable talking to my friends and family, right? We're all going to have our own anxieties and our own worries and things that we're going to find more comfortable to do and less comfortable to do. The thing that I would lean on, which Steve brought up, is be creative about how you can do the things that generate business in the manner that is comfortable and natural to you, to the degree that you are not hiding from growing. Right. So like what I always encourage people is try things, right? Because when we try them, yes, there's some nerves involved with it, but at least we're pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone. But at the end of the day, long term, we're going to be best at what we do when we do it the most natural way we can possibly do it, right? I heard somebody say once, and I love this quote, the best script is the one that's genuine. Right? Like at the end of the day, a genuine human being who just knows how to communicate well with people and they're coming from a good place is going to do well in a human to human business, right? Because they're comfortable, they're being genuine, they're being honest. So yes, we need to learn scripts, and I believe in scripts 100%, but we find our place where we're just comfortable and genuine, and that's where we really hit our stride. So, you know, I love the example Steve gave of instead of doing a bold 100 outbound, do a bold 100 inbound. At the end of the day, it's about stirring the pot. So that's a way to do it that is proactive, but possibly more comfortable for someone who's nervous making those kinds of phone calls. So I really appreciate that. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Number one, a quick introduction for anybody who doesn't know me. My name is Matt Erdman. I am your instructor for today, so you are stuck with me. The good news is there is a leave the meeting button. So if you really don't like me, you can press the leave button and I will disappear from your world. So that's a pretty cool thing that we don't have face-to-face. Hopefully that's not the case though. A little bit of background. I originally started as an agent with another company in Massachusetts. That's where I started my real estate career. Joined Keller Williams probably 18 months or so after I started. Started a team with Keller Williams, got recruited to become a team leader, came down to Connecticut to run a market center. 3 years later, I took over that market center as an OP. Today, I'm an OP of Keller Williams Legacy Partners, which has a little over 400 agents in Connecticut, multiple locations around the state. I'm also the operating principal of the Keller Williams New England region. As you guys have already heard, I've got 2 little girls, I've got 2 horses, 2 pit bulls, 2 tortoises, and 1 bearded dragon and a beautiful wife. So that's kind of me in 60 seconds. So today we are going to talk about what is one of my absolute favorite topics. My 2 favorite topics to teach to or coach to in this industry is lead generation, right? Because at the end of the day, lead generation is the tip of the spear, right? We know from the MREA, regardless of what business you're in, you're actually in 2 businesses, whatever business you're in and lead generation. If we don't lead generate, we don't have customers or clients. And if we don't have customers or clients, we don't actually have a business. Right. So no matter what we do, we are in 2 businesses. So I love coaching and consulting and teaching to that. The other thing that I love coaching and teaching to is financials. And here's the reason why. I'm going to share a quick story before we dive into the content. My experience when I first got into the business, I learned two lessons very quickly. Again, I joined with another company. There were some of the top agents in the entire area that worked out of that office. These folks were legends, right? I saw their signs all over town. They had billboards. They were the people that I aspired to be professionally. The first thing I realized when I started spending time in the office and around these agents is I started to realize these folks were 20, 30 years into their career. And what I was seeing outside looking in is they were still working days, nights, weekends, going on vacation with their cell phone glued to their ear. And it didn't appear that they were doing it because they were choosing to do it. It appeared as if they were doing it because they had to in order to keep the business going. So one of the first ahas I had is, wow, if this is what it looks like 20, 30 years into this business, it doesn't look like a business to me. It looks like a job. And it might be a job that pays really well, but it still looks like a job. So mentally, I was kind of like, okay, I respect these people tremendously, yet I'm going to have to learn a different way how to do this business, because 20 to 30 years in, my income shouldn't, and my success shouldn't be a direct exchange of time for money and or results, right? That was my first aha. My second aha is as I got to know some of these people personally, I was shocked to find out that a lot of them had financial challenges. And in my very naive state, when I started in real estate, I was in my 20s. I looked like I was 12 years old and borrowed my dad's suit. So I was very young and very naive to what the real estate industry sometimes looked like behind the curtain. And I was just shocked. Like, I could do the math. I knew how many houses these folks were selling. I knew what that meant in the way of commissions. I was like, how is it possible they're having financial challenges? Like, some of them were real. They were behind on taxes, behind on car payments, mortgages. And I was like, this is crazy. How is this even possible? And then I got into leadership. And when I got into leadership, your door becomes the door that people knock on to say, hey, I got to have a conversation, right? And you get that peek behind the curtain. And what I realized really quickly is for a really long time, and I do believe it's changing, but for a really long time, all the tools, training, education, everything that was available within our industry was about two things. It was about generating business and servicing business at a high level, right? So it was customer service and lead generation, right? Those were kind of the two things we teach, train, coach, all those things. That's what the awards are on, right? We give awards on GCI, we give awards on units, we give awards on all these things. Yet the purpose of business is to fund a perfect life. In order to do that, the business has to be profitable. Where I believe our industry fell down for a really, really, really long time is we were not teaching people how to be business owners. We were teaching them how to be salespeople and how to be customer service advocates, both of which are important. But if we don't know the business skills to run our finances like an actual business, we can do a tremendous amount of production, serve a tremendous amount of people, and be sitting at home looking at our tax returns or our bills and going, oh my gosh, how is this possible? So for me, this is like my hot button. Being able to talk to people about how to run the business like a business, manage both their personal and professional finances in a way that they can actually build wealth and not just have a high paid sales job. That's like my favorite thing to do. So that's what we're going to lean into today. We are going to talk about the basics of financials inside of your business. Okay. So after that long introduction, I'm going to share my screen here. Does anybody have any questions while I'm getting our slide set up? Okay. Everybody's got the screen? Thumbs up? Okay. Okay. All right. So as I said, this is session 8 of Ignite, where we're going to focus on the basics of financials. Give me 1 second here. I got something weird happening. There we go. All right. You guys still got my screen? All right. I'm just organizing you all on different screens so I can see what I'm doing here. See all of you, knows paying attention and who's walking their dog.
And everything you're saying is being typed on the screen too.
Yeah, it's really funny. Let me see if I can shut that off. The meeting I had before this was happening too, which freaked me out. It's bad enough to hear my words, to see them in writing is scary. You know what though? Is it super distracting or can I ignore it? Ignore it? Okay. All right, cool. All right, so let's roll. All right, so here's the content that we're going to focus on. The goal of our time together today is to teach the habits to build financially sound businesses. Okay, so we're going to employ techniques and models that are used by the most successful real estate agents in managing how each commission check is handled and how we can use those funds to build our future, invest in our business, and invest in our dreams, our personal wealth, all those things. Again, the thing I want to keep coming back to is the purpose of business is to fund a perfect life. So if our business is not profitable, then we cannot fund our perfect life with that, okay? So what successful agents do every day? Number one, everything they do fits into two buckets. They're either growing their business or running their business. Little tip that I will give you, when I was actively selling, the way I managed those two things is I had a set schedule. And inside of that set schedule, I had time blocked to work on the business instead of in the business. Now, I clearly spent more time working in it than on it, but I made sure I carved out the time. So for me personally, that time was Wednesday afternoon, after 12 o'clock. So when I met a client, I would let them know how I work, how I communicate, what hours I'm working, what hours I'm not working. And I would share with them that on Wednesdays, I work directly with clients until 12 o'clock. From 12 o'clock on, the rest of my day, I am working on the business, right? All week long, when I'm face to face with clients like you, there are things that need to be done in order for my business to be able to grow and serve you at a really high level. That's when I work on all those things, right? So I would let them know during those time frames, that's when I kind of go off the radar, right? So find a way to build that time in and protect that time. So the things we do to grow is obvious. Number one, lead generate for buyers and sellers. Best case scenario, you do that early in the morning, right? It's that concept of eat the frog. Do your hardest work or the work that takes the most mental energy early in the day. If you do that and you're lead generating, say 3 hours a day, and you do that 9 to 12, by the time you get to 12, you've won the day. If the day goes sideways on you, you've done the most important thing in your business, which is do the work to get into relationship with people that you can do real estate business with. So number one is lead generation. Number two, make seller listing presentations and get listings. Number three, make buyer presentations and get buyer listings. Number four is preview real estate, especially early in our career. It's important to get out and see as much real estate as we can so we can learn and be knowledgeable. When we physically go out and see real estate, we learn much faster, right? Because we start to learn the neighborhoods, the intricacies. There's just a lot of things that we pick up. So early in your career, and obviously as part of Ignite, this is part of your homework, is going out and actually physically seeing real estate. So those are the four things to grow the business. Now to run the business, you have market to sellers, right? So the activities you do to get in front of those sellers, marketing to sellers. What is the difference between marketing and lead generation? Somebody tell me. This is that time, guys.
So marketing is kind of not getting personal with specific people. Lead generation is having specific conversations with specific people.
Yep, that's fair. Here's a one way to think about it, and that's an accurate statement. Lead generation is proactive, it's outbound. Marketing is somewhat passive. It's activities that are generating inbound. And here's how we typically want to think about it. Lead generation is door knocking, networking, cold calling, calling our sphere and having those conversations. All of that is lead generation. Any activity where you're proactively reaching out. Marketing is we're putting a system in place, be it a mailer, be it drip campaigns, whatever those things are that do work, whether we are working or not. Okay. Typically, early in our careers, we want to lean, most of us, early in our career, we have more time than we do money. So typically, we're going to lean heavier into lead generation and free marketing early in our career. The two reasons for that is one, any proactive activity is going to generate results faster, right? So if you decide to do a mailer to a farm area, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a very legitimate way to market. But the time it's going to take for that to penetrate that neighborhood and you to start getting results, that's a time on task over time thing. Whereas if you're proactive and you're making calls to people or you're going out and meeting people, you're going to get results quicker. So we typically want to lean into lead generation early in our career, free marketing being the tools inside of Command, our smart plans, those types of things. And as we grow our business, we make sure we set aside money to reinvest in additional marketing strategies. So market it to seller listings, showing buyers houses, negotiating contracts, transaction management and closing, vendor management, setting goals, compliance and risk management, attending training and coaching, and managing our money. Those are all things that we're doing to run our business or work on the business instead of in the business. Now, here's the other thing I want to point out before we move to the next slide. The biggest challenge we have as we grow our business is it is very easy as we start to get momentum to spend 90, if not 100% of our time on the right-hand side of the screen. Right? We can get up, we can put on a suit and tie or a polo or a whatever our business attire is, right? And walk out the door every day. And we can market to sellers, show buyers houses, negotiate contracts, manage the transaction, do all those things and go home and feel like we worked all day, which we did. But the challenge is we're working on an opportunity that we generated at a previous time. Right? What ends up happening is as we get busy, we stop doing the lead generation that creates the opportunity for us to run the business, right? The activities there on the right side. So the biggest challenge we have is making sure that we're structuring our day, our activities in a way that no matter how busy we get, we're always working on the left side for at least some portion of the day. And this is why we typically say, if you do it early in the day, you have a far likelihood of being successful because number one, you're at your best energy. Number two, you have the least amount of things trying to pull you away from that activity. As your day gets going, all the stuff on the right side of the screen starts to tug at you and it becomes harder to stay focused. So real success is making sure that that left side, that grow side is in your calendar at least 5 days a week, block time, you're committed to it, you're doing those activities. And when you're done, the rest of your day is free to work on the right side. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Okay, so we kind of talked about this, just a little bit of perspective. All of us went and got our, went through a licensing course in order to become a realtor. And most of us very quickly realized once we got in the business, we passed our test, we affiliated with an office, right? We walked out the door ready to rock and roll real estate one day and looked up and went, shoot, what do I do? Right? Like what we learned is what we had to learn to pass the test. Now there's a whole new set of learning, which is, okay, I passed the test, I have a license, it says I can transact now. Now what do I do? Like, how do I actually get business? What do I need to learn? All of those things. This is a part of that, right? They don't teach us how to run our business like a business in our licensing class. They teach us how to pass a test. So the value of this is really learning how do we run this business like an actual business. And as you guys know, KW is all about models and systems, right? Which is really valuable because models and systems are based on people's past successes. What did they do? Finding that commonality so we can figure out what is it that they're doing to become successful that is duplicatable, right? Because there's someone can be successful in a way that is not duplicatable, right? You can't look at it and go, I'm going to do that to be successful. When you're looking for a model, whether it's for fitness, whether it's for overall health, whether it's for business, whether it's how to be a better parent, you've got to look for models, things that produce an outcome that you want that are actually duplicatable. Oh, I can go do what that person did. And there's evidence that if I do that, I'll get the result that they got, right? And that's what we want to focus on. So number one, we're going to talk about setting a profit goal that funds your big life, right? and how we pursue those activities in order to achieve it. So that's a really, really big one.
Can I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Oh, 100%.
Sorry. Can you send the link to that session? Just because I was trying to find it in my book and I don't see it. I don't know where we're at.
Is it the PowerPoint that you're looking for?
Yeah.
I thought you were looking for the Zoom link. I can send you the PowerPoint link. Hold on a second.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, so we're going to talk about setting a profit goal. We're going to talk about how we estimate and save to pay our taxes on time. Can't stress this enough. The number one place that not only realtors, but all self-employed people, the number one place where we get ourselves into trouble is taxes. But I always joke around, we get our commission check. We're super excited. We get that check. We're off to Sizzler. I know nobody goes to Sizzler. It's just fun to say. But the point is we receive that check and we treat it like it's profit. It is not profit. That is not all our money. That is revenue. Revenue is drastically different than profit, right? From that money, we have to pay taxes. We have to pay business expenses. So if we take that money, we treat it like it's all ours and we run out and spend it. Eventually we look up and we go, oh shoot, taxes are due. I don't have the money and now we have a problem. Or oh shoot, I've got a bill to pay inside of my business and I don't have the money because I went out and bought shoes or a big TV or I upgraded my car, right? I treated my revenue like profit. So we're going to set a profit goal, and then we're going to learn how to estimate and save for taxes. We're going to use proven models and systems of the MREA and the chart of accounts. I'm going to show you some simple ways to do that. We're going to learn how to be fiscally savvy by reviewing our financials monthly. Same thing, I'm going to give you some tools and tips outside of this content to make that a little bit easier to do both inside of your business and outside of your business. Everything we're going to talk about today applies inside and outside of your business, right? If you run a super buttoned up business, you've got a P&L, you're putting money aside for taxes, you're putting money aside for business expenses so you can reinvest, you're doing all of the right things. But then on a personal level, you are living outside of your financial means, right? You're spending everything you're getting, you're using credit cards. All that fiscal responsibility in your business will get wiped out. It doesn't matter. And vice versa is the same, right? You've got to take these philosophies, these concepts, and these models and apply them in your business and in your personal life. And when you do both of those things, what can happen over time is incredible. But you have to implement on both sides. We're going to talk about paying yourself a salary, right? And this goes back to the commission you receive is revenue, not profit. One of the smartest and greatest things you can do for yourself is decide what you're paying yourself. And that is all you pay yourself until you earn the opportunity to give yourself a raise. That does two things. One, it keeps capital inside of your business for both taxes and business expenses so you can reinvest and grow your business. And two, it forces you to control your lifestyle. Here's the biggest challenge we have just as Americans. And this is an interesting thing. Write this down. If you go to Google or YouTube and you type in Ray Dalio, I believe it's D-A-L-I-O. If you misspell it, it'll figure it out. Google smart, so is YouTube. Ray Dalio, how the economic machine works. It is a long video. I have the attention span of a goldfish. And I watched that video multiple times, the entire thing. It is worth sitting and watching. But what it does is it describes in layman terms how the US economy actually works. Here's the most interesting thing I took away from it. If every American today decided they were not going to use credit, they were solely going to live on the income that they generate, the entire US economy would collapse. Take that in for a minute. The US economy actually relies on us raising our lifestyle beyond our financial means. If every American stopped doing that, our economy would crash. That's insane. That is a terrifying thing. Now, here's the deal. Just because you know that doesn't mean you have to participate in it. the US economy can afford to have some people who decide they're not going to play that game and they're not going to bury themselves in debt for the good of the country, right? I'm a military guy. I like to consider myself kind of old school. Like I consider myself a patriotic human being, even if that's out of fashion these days. It is not patriotic to bury yourself in debt for the good of the economy. Okay. So it's just shocking. The challenge we have in our society, period, is the more money we make, the more we raise our lifestyle. And we do it in tandem. And then we wonder why, man, one day I made 50 grand. Like that's what I made. That was my income. And then I made 100, and then I made 150, and then I made 200. Why does it all feel the same? I don't feel any safer, more stable at 200 than I did at 50. Well, that's because we keep raising our lifestyle. And as we raise our lifestyle, it costs more money and it feels exactly the same. Maybe we have some more stuff, but it feels exactly the same because we're constantly raising our lifestyle with our income. So we have to be super, super cautious of that. Then we're going to talk about how to prepare now to secure our financial future. Okay, great quote. Money is good for the good it can do. Quote from Gary Keller. And I think that's actually really important. When we talk about setting our financial goal, it's really important to tie that to something that actually matters. Because here's what I can tell you from my own experience and from what I've seen. Whatever it is we're choosing to do, majority of the time, if we've set a significant enough of a goal, we are going to find at times that it's harder than we expected to achieve it. If it's not, maybe we just needed to set a higher goal. But if we actually stretch ourselves and set a big goal, at some point, it's going to feel like it's harder than we expected. If our only motivation behind that is, I want to make 100 grand, right? Like I ask people all the time, what's your goal for this year, the next 12 months, or your first 12 months? And they throw out a dollar. I want to make 100 grand. Cool. Why? Why does that matter? If they can't answer that question, they got some work to do. Because when they start feeling the pressure that it's a little harder than they expected, if all we're really attached to is a dollar amount, we're not going to show up with the grit and the motivation to push through that. There's got to be something more important. Whether it's that $100,000 represents freedom from a corporate job, whether that $100,000 allows us to, start saving for our children's college fund, whatever it is, I want to start building wealth so that I can, in real estate, so I can pass that on to my children when they're like, whatever it is, there's got to be something behind it that means something more than putting money in the bank. Does that make sense? Right. And that's what they mean when they say money is good for the good it can do. Right. The good it can do for you, the good it can do for your family, the people you love, the good it can do for your community, all of those things. All right. So let's talk about what is financially sound and what is financially unsound. So on the left-hand side, we have an example of a commission check coming in, which is $9,000. Okay. We have our split with our market center. So the net check that we end up receiving in this example is, and this is small on my screen, but I believe it's $5,760. Let me try something quick. I'm going to move you guys. 1 second. There. Okay. Did the screen just change for you guys? That's weird.
Yeah, you turned off the slide presentation and took us into the raw slides.
There we go. We back?
You're back.
All right, cool. All right, so commission's 9,000, pay to the order of, in this example, Jessica Campbell. Her gross paycheck after the split with the market center is $5,760. This is the going to the Sizzler moment that I was talking about previously. In this example, we take that $5,760 and we deposit it into our personal bank account, right? And then we spend it. So a couple of people chime in and share. What are some of the issues with that?
Well, we need to put maybe a third aside for taxes,
Mm-hmm.
a third aside to grow your business, and then the last third you can go out to dinner.
You got it. Yeah, the reality is if we do that, we're doing two things. Number one, we're spending money that isn't ours. We're depriving our business of the capital necessary to grow it in the future. And we're commingling our funds. Right? We're putting everything, our revenue, into our personal bank account. We're commingling business expenses and personal expenses, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Both of those things create massive chaos in the future. And here's what I can tell you. The bigger your business gets, the harder it is to unwind bad financial habits. So the time to put financial habits in place that are going to serve you well in the future is now. The bigger it gets, the harder it becomes to do it. If you can develop those habits now, it's going to serve you really, really well in the future, and it's going to save you a lot of pain. Okay. On the right-hand side of the screen is what should actually happen, right? $9,000 check comes in, 5,760 is the revenue, not the profit, that goes to Jessica Campbell. She takes, in this example, $1,728 and she puts it in her business bank account. Then she puts the remaining $4,032 into her personal account, and then she splits that up. She takes the taxes out, which in this example is $1,613 to cover her taxes. What actually goes into Jessica's wallet to be spent is $2,419. Now, here's the challenge. What is your emotional reaction? Like the chemical reaction that happens in your body when you get the $5,760 check compared to the $2,419 check? Which one feels better? Yeah, I see Arthur is muted, but I see him laughing and throwing his hands up like, well, duh.
Yeah, well, because I mean, obviously the bigger check is more exciting. Everybody says, wow, I just got, when in reality, that's not what I just got. And for the record, I went to school in college and one of my major was accounting. So that's why I'm laughing. And when I worked in the restaurant business, I also handled a lot of the financial end. So I can totally relate to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yep. So that's the truth, right? When you ask most agents, and I'm going to add to that, just self-employed people, because this isn't unique to real estate. Self-employed people, oftentimes when they speak about what they made, right? You ask an agent, they'll tell you, I made $400,000 last year. That's typically their 1099. That's their revenue, right? And oftentimes they don't actually know the answer about what they truly made until they file their taxes, right? So it's developing the discipline. The reality is 5760 sounds way more exciting than 2419. Yet, regardless of how you feel about it, what you made is 2419, period, end of story. If you want to convince yourself it's 5760 and behave accordingly, you're going to have some significant pain down the road financially. If you can get right with the fact that this is how the business works, and oh, by the way, you are operating a business that should be able to function at a 40% profit margin, which anyone who has ever owned any other business knows a 40% profit margin is massive, massive, right? So again, while this feels good, handle it, treat it for what it is. This is your actual net profit. That's what you build your life on. This is revenue, okay? All right, so financial sound business example. So here's just the example that we kind of just went through. The $9,000 commission, 5760 was the net. 2419 went into the pocket. The remainder was expenses and taxes that were accounted for, okay? So this is not in your content. I added this slide to hopefully give you a blueprint of how I believe you can manage this in a fairly simple way. And you might look at this and say, Matt, that doesn't look simple to me. If there's a way you can dumb it down a little bit, feel free to do that. But this is how I believe you can handle this the easiest way possible.
Well, Matt, the thing that's confusing me is you're not giving us percentages on what you're taking for business versus taxes, et cetera.
So we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
I'll get into that detail for you. So this is a structure, okay? This is candidly how I run my businesses. It's how I run my personal life. I've done it for a really long time. I don't know why, I just have, but it works. For me, I try to keep things simple. And by simple, I don't mean the process is simple. I mean, how can I protect myself from human nature as much as possible, right? Know thyself, number one, and create systems to benefit what you're good at and protect you from the things you're not good at, right? And to me, this is a way to do that. So this is how I always encourage people to set up their business and their personal accounts. Courtney, are you waving at me or somebody walking by?
No, I was waving at you. Hi. No, I'm just kidding. So back to the other slide real quick. What are the actual percentages? And also, when we're looking at the taxes, like what we're going to be taxed, do we get taxed per transaction, or do we get taxed on what our annual salary ends up being?
Okay, great questions. So number one, it does vary a little bit, but I'm going to give you the basics of the answer to the percentage question. If you look at the Keller Williams financial model, so one of our models is the financial model, and it's a 30-30-40 model. What that means is you should expect that 30% of your revenue is going to go to cost of sale. Now, cost of sale is an expense that you only have when you do a transaction. At its simplest form, that's usually your split with the market center, okay? A lot of us, we may have different financial structures. So you might be on an 80-20 with your market center, you might be on 70-30, whatever that is, that's your cost of sale. Expenses, that's your second 30. Typically, you're going to be putting 30% of your revenue aside for expenses, okay? So when you make money, 30% of it should be set aside to reinvest later into your business. When you get down to the how much should I set aside for taxes, that number is going to vary depending on how much money you're making, what state you live in, all sorts of different things. It is a conversation to have with your accountant. However, a general good rule of thumb is 25%. If you're putting 25% aside of gross income, you're probably going to be okay at the end of the year and might even have a little bit of extra. Again, have a conversation with the CPA. But here's why I say that. And this leads to your second question. What you actually pay taxes on is your profit, not your revenue. Okay, so if you make $100,000, but you spend $30,000 on expenses, then you made $70,000. Well, then you also paid a cap to your market center of, let's just say 20,000 to make up a number and have simple math. Well, your actual profit now, after you paid your market center and paid your expenses, is now $50,000. That is what you will pay taxes on. Okay. So if you take 25% of gross, which means your top line income, you should be fine when it comes to tax time, because you're not actually being taxed on top line, you're being taxed on bottom line profit. Right. So 25. So 25 of 100,000, if you set it aside for taxes, is 25 grand. Now you're going to pay whatever your tax bracket is on 50 grand. You're probably going to have a little extra set aside. So 25% is a good rule of thumb, but you should still talk to a CPA.
Okay. Does at the end of the year, does Keller Williams tell us how much they took from us?
So Keller Williams doesn't take taxes from you.
Well, no, I mean just like for splits and stuff like that.
Yes. So you have reports that give you that information throughout the year, so you can track it. So if you go to My KW and reports, and someone at your market center can help you find those specific reports. But they have reports where you can track what your revenue was, what you paid in cost of sale. And at the end of the year, they're going to give you a 1099, which says this is what you made after the market center took their cut, if you will.
Okay. My last question is, when is a good time to get started with a CPA?
Yesterday. There's a few things. Yes, there's a few things you should already have, and don't feel bad if you don't, because I will tell you, there's people who go through their whole career and don't have these things, but they pay the price for it. You need a P&L, profit and loss statement, and we're going to talk about that. And you need a CPA. Right? I talk to people all the time who go, I just started, so I'm not tracking I don't have a profit and loss yet. I don't need it. Okay. I haven't even made money yet. Do you have expenses? Okay, so how are you tracking those? I'm not. Okay, well then you don't have a business. You have a hobby that hopefully makes you money, definitely costs you money, but you don't have a business until you're running it like a business. So you should have a P&L now. You should have a budget now, and I'm going to show you some simple ways to do that. You should have a CPA now.
Thank
Fair
you.
enough? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The other thing, so I'm going to add to that. You should have a P&L, you should have a budget, you should have a CPA, and you should have separate business accounts, which is what we're going to talk about right now. When you commingle your personal and your business expenses, it creates a massive mess, and you can't tell what you're spending where. So an example of this I give is if you own rental properties, and let's say you own 10 rental properties and you run and you're tracking it, you have a profit and loss statement, but you have one profit and loss statement that tracks all of your rental properties. Here's the challenge with that. You might be making money at the end of the year. You know how much money you made, and that's good. You're ahead of most. But you don't actually know inside of that portfolio of properties, you may have 2 properties that are complete dogs that you're losing 15 grand a year on. But you have other ones that are doing really well, and they're hiding the ones that are not doing well. If you have them all lumped together and you're not tracking them separately, you may hold on to properties that you should sell and get better properties, but you don't know that because it's all lumped together. It's the same when we commingle our business and our personal expenses. It becomes so messy and blurry, we can't actually look at our personal life and or our business separate to say, what are we doing that's smart and what are we doing that's not working that we need to stop doing and put that investment into something that is working. It becomes really hard to do that because it's all messed together. So you got to have separate accounts. So here's how I recommend doing it. And these are I'll go through kind of the language around it. Number one, on the business side, I believe you have 2 accounts at a minimum. You have a savings account and a checking account. In business language, you would call your savings account a capital account. Okay. In business language, you would call your checking account an operating account. Simple language that we're used to, savings account and a checking account. One is where you keep money, one is where you spend money. Okay, but in business, we call it a capital account as your savings, and operating is the account you spend out of for your checking account. When you receive a commission, that commission should be deposited into your capital account. Okay. Because you're running a business, like a business, you know how much money you intend to spend every month in your business, including paying yourself. So let's just make up numbers and say I spend $1,000 a month to run my business and I pay myself $5,000 a month. So that's $6,000 a month that I spend every month. 1,000 to run my business, 5,000 to pay myself. I'm just making those numbers up. That means every month in that business checking account, I need $6,000. That's the money I need to pay my bills and pay myself. So what I encourage people to do is all the money you make from your business first goes into your capital account. Then at the end of the month or the very beginning of every month, you transfer your monthly budget into your operating account. Then you pay yourself. In this example, $5,000 goes into my personal account. I have $1,000 left here. Now I pay my bills out of that account. Here's the reason I encourage this. It forces us to either stay on budget or at least be conscious of the fact that we are out of budget. Okay. Now we're going to go over to the personal side and then I'm going to circle back on this. On the personal side, we deposited $5,000 into our personal savings account. I'm then going to move my taxes over. So if we're using 25%, I'm going to take 25% of the 5,000. I'm going to put it in the tax reserve account. That is not mine. I need to forget that money isn't in there. Then I'm going to move my budget, my personal budget for the month to my checking account. So let's say it costs me $2,500. Again, I'm just making up numbers. It cost me $2,500 to run my household. I moved 5,000 here. I took 25% of that. I put it here. I now move $2,000 into my checking account. I now pay all my personal bills out of my checking account. If you're doing this, you have 5 bank accounts, 2 checking, 2 savings, and 1 tax account. Both on the business side and on the personal side, what you're doing is only giving yourself enough money to run the business the way you said you were going to, and to run your life the way you said you were going to. So if I know it costs me $2,500 a month for me to live, and I know my account started with $2,500, if I go to Best Buy and I see a 76-inch TV on sale, and I go, holy cow, that TV is sick, and it's 20% off, I'm gonna buy it. Well, guess what? Do I have enough money in my account to buy that TV? I don't. So what it does is it causes a stopgap. I have to stop and think like, okay, if I swipe my debit card right now, it's not gonna work. So if I want this TV, I actually have to go get cash out of my savings account, deposit it, or I got to do a transfer in order to have enough money in the account to make this impulse purchase that I did not plan on making. At the very least, it causes a pause to say, do I really need to be spending this money? Because if I'm choosing to do this, I'm going to be veering from my plan, which means I'm taking money out of my bank account to cover this impulse purchase, and I'm going to have to go earn the money to put it back in my account. It just helps the pattern. It's a pattern interrupt from impulse purchases. Now, depending on how you function, know thyself. If you know spending is an issue for you, I would encourage you to put that savings account in a different bank and chop up the debit card. Now, online banking has kind of screwed this up, because now we have things like Zelle, or however you pronounce that, right? We have all these means of moving money digitally from account to account, bank to bank. I've been doing this for years, and wherever I live, the people at the bank think I'm weird, because I show up and I take large amounts of money out of the bank in cash, and I drive to the other bank, I deposit large amounts of money in cash, because this is how I handle my finances. My bank account personally only has enough money for my budget. If I'm going to purchase something outside of that budget, I have to go get cash because I don't have a debit card. I have to go get the money, to go deposit the money, and then go make the purchase. So my bank sees me on a regular basis come in and get chunks of cash and go deposit chunks of cash, and they're like, this dude's weird, and they make me sign papers that I'm not a terrorist. But what it does is it just takes the money out of reach enough that it becomes a pain to make an impulse decision. Does that make sense? Okay. The other thing is credit cards, right? If you, again, know thyself, if you're challenged in that it's really easy for you to whip out that credit card and swipe it, I would encourage you to do a couple of things. One, stop carrying them with you. Right? So again, if it's that impulse moment, you actually have to go get the credit card if you're going to use it, and it gives you time to make a decision. Do I really want to buy something I can't afford to buy in cash and then pay interest on that? I personally know somebody who went further. He was married. Him and his wife had very different financial habits. She was very frugal. He was a spender. It was causing friction in their relationship and causing a lot of debt. He liked to swipe credit cards, and that was becoming a problem financially and inside of their relationship. They actually took all of their credit cards, put it in a Ziploc bag, filled it with water, and put it in the freezer. So if they made a choice to leverage credit to live outside of their means, they had to go home and thaw out the credit cards, which then gave them the opportunity to think about, do I really need that? And also have the conversation spouse to spouse, like, is this the smart thing to do? Right? So my point in sharing that story is whatever it takes to set up your financial world in a way that it protects you from habits that are going to move you away from your true goals. Okay. Another thing I heard years and years and years ago that always stuck with me that kind of plays to this is, if you're feeling stress in your life, take a look at your bank account and your calendar. You are probably spending both time and money on things that are not in alignment with your values. I'm gonna say it again. If you're feeling stress in your life, take a look at your calendar and your bank account. You are probably spending time and money on things that are not in alignment with your values. Another way to say it, not in alignment with your goals. Another way to say it is not important to you. right? We look at our bank account. How many people have ever gotten an extra $500? And fast forward 2 weeks or a month, you look at your bank account and it's gone and you have no idea where it went. Anybody ever do that? I'm the only one. Okay, it's me and Trevor. Me and Trevor have done it. David's done it. Nobody else. You guys are awesome. Okay, now we're getting some more hits. It happens. It's human nature, right? And usually we are like, maybe we're like, oh my gosh, I got hacked. And we go check our bank account. And then we see these little impulsive transactions. Spend it here, there, and you add them all up and you go, oh yeah, yep, I spent it on a bunch of crap that didn't really matter to me, right? So set your world up in a way that you're protected from yourself, and that the financial habits, the systems, the models you put in play are moving you towards what's important to you instead of pulling you away. Okay. Is that
Hey, can I ask, hi Pat, yeah, this is Brian McGrain. I'm just wondering, I've never really heard that whole deal with, I'm very fiscally responsible. I never have ever paid a credit card payment, if you would, for interest, but I never heard the cash thing. Is that because it's a psychological perspective for you that if I have this cash, I physically have it in my hand, I'm going to take it to another bank and do something with it that way? Because I'm just, that's a new one I've never heard of. So is there something else behind that? I mean, you could take a bank check with you, you know, to another bank. You could do a lot of things.
Yes, and sometimes it does turn into a bank check, depending on how big the amount is. So I think there's two things at play. One, if you go get cash, there's a different mentality when you look at a pile of cash than when you swipe a credit card or walk with a piece of paper that says a dollar amount, right? It feels more valuable and you're about to let it go, right? That's number one. But what I think is more important and probably serves us better is you're just making it really inconvenient to be impulsive.
Yeah.
Right. Like I believe one of the things we have to learn how to practice in life to have a good life is delayed gratification. Right. We live in a really, really tricky world where the things we get the most amount of quick joy out of are usually bad for us. Right. And the things that are going to serve us at the highest level long term are usually not pleasant up front. Right. So like if you can learn to practice delayed gratification, it will have a massive impact on everything, your relationships, your business, your finances, your health. Right. Like think about it. The food as humans, for whatever reason, most of us love to eat is pizza and burgers and chips. And which, by the way, I love to eat. I love all those things. However, those are the things that make us feel good immediately. But long term, those are also the things that break us down physically. Right? The things that are really good for us aren't necessarily the things we typically want to eat every day unless we've created that habit, that we've shifted that in our head and our taste buds, that those are now the things we desire. But most of us, right, the thing that gives us instant joy from a food standpoint are the foods that are bad for us. Foods that are going to be good for us long term are the ones that we don't get as much immediate gratification from. Right? And it's the same thing with a lot of other things. You buy tires for your car, there's zero gratification in that. You drive away, your car feels the same. Tires are a little shinier. You feel like you just blew $500, $600, $800, whatever your tires cost. You get no gratitude out of that. But you take that money and you go buy a big screen TV, it feels kind of cool because you go home, you hang it on the wall, and now you're watching TV and blah, blah, blah. So I think it's just about creating a hurdle that makes it inconvenient to be impulsive financially. That's where I think the benefit is. And for me, I've never really been fiscally irresponsible. Not that I haven't had hard times financially, because I definitely have, but I grew up very broke. So I think some of the habits that I created financially at a very early age, truthfully, probably came out of fear of not wanting to live that way. So when I got money, I tended to want to hold on to it instead of spend it. Right. So like I didn't get my first brand new vehicle until I was 35 probably. And I paid for half of it in cash, financed the rest, paid it off in 2 years and drove it for the next 10. Right. And I had people around me who were like, why don't you get a new car? I'm like, because this one runs and I like it. And it's been paid off for 8 years. Like, so I've kind of been wired, yet I've created these things so that as I go through life, it's still hard for me to develop bad habits because I made it really inconvenient to develop bad habits. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions around that? Was this helpful? And like, I'd love to hear like an aha or something of value or something that hit home from somebody, just so I can hear someone else's voice besides my own.
Calling it revenue instead of calling it commission is going to help me much more mentally.
Love that. Yeah. Call it what it is. What else? No other ahas?
I think for me, focusing on lead generating, because I was kind of getting a little off focus and trying to put flyers out, stick with lead generating so I can actually get customers.
Yeah, love that. And by the way, just a quick tidbit, go back to what Steve said at the beginning of the call. There's a way to do that where it's more proactive in its lead generation, right? Other than door knocking before an open house in the neighborhood, the only other door knocking I door knocked Fizbo's. And really I went to their open houses. And when I was selling in the area that I was selling, there was a lot of Fizbo's. There's less of them today. For sale by owner, by the way, is what Fizbo is. Somebody selling on their own. So I used to do those. I would door knock before an open house to do a nosy neighbor sneak preview and invite them to the open house. And the only other door knocking I did, because that was an uncomfortable thing for me if I didn't have a clear purpose as to why I was doing it. And this goes back to the flyers. I would do like charity stuff in a neighborhood that I wanted to build my business. Right. So that was my way of being proactive with taking marketing and turning it into lead gen. So I would go door knock an area, drop a bag and a flyer, say, this is who I am, this is what I do, but I'm actually in the neighborhood right now because I'm doing a food drive to benefit such and such local food pantry. And I just want to drop this bag off. I'm going to be swinging back through on Tuesday between this time and this time. If you'd be so kind as to leave some non-perishables outside in the bag, I'll swing by and pick them up. And I'll make sure I follow up with you to know what we were able to collect, so you know how it benefited your local community. And by doing that, it got me in front of them in a way that I was coming from contribution. Obviously, I left them a flyer that had my contact information. I was clear that I was a realtor. But if you notice in that script, I also built in a follow-up. The follow-up is going to be letting them know how we did and how much of a contribution them and their neighbors were able to make to the local community. So then there would be a follow-up to say, hey, I just want to follow up and say thank you for participating in the food drive. You and your neighbors provided 500 pounds of non-perishables to the local food pantry. Thank you again. If there's ever anything I can do for real estate, let me know, whatever. Right. So, think about that when you think about what you are doing, what you're not doing. Like, how can you put a twist on it to make it effective and comfortable? Love that. All right. Any questions before we move on? Good to go. It's a quiet group. Okay. So MREA economic model. Okay. Number one, if you have not read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, please read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Okay. It is the Bible of our company and our system. Right? Everything we teach, train, this is the foundation. It's built on top of this, right? So you want to read it, want to understand it. It is your guidebook. But in there, one of the models is the economic model. And some of you guys asked about this. So this is when I said the 30-30-40 model. The money that you receive, your GCI, gross commission income. So you sell a house for $100,000 and it's a 10% commission, just for easy math. That's $10,000. That's your GCI. GCI is the sale price times the commission rate. That's your GCI. Then we have a split with the market center, whatever that is, 80%, 20%. In the economic model, we use 30%. That's your cost of sale. Again, the definition of cost of sale is an expense that only happens when a transaction closes. So fast forward, if you have a team, cost of sale would now be not only you're split with the market center, but you're split with your team member. If you pay a referral fee on a transaction, that's part of your cost of sale. Does that make sense? Head nods, thumbs up. Okay. Then you have your operating expense. We should be budgeting for 30% towards our operating expenses. And then 40% is our net profit. Okay. Now the cost of sale is fairly simple when we're just an individual agent. And so if you're on an 80-20 as a percentage, your cost of sale early in your career will be 20%. If you're on a 70-30, it'll be 30%. You get to the point where you cap with your market center, that percentage will start to go down, assuming you don't add salespeople to your team, because now you're getting 100% of your commissions. So that starts to shrink. You add a salesperson to your team, that cost of sale is going to rise. As you grow your business, the goal is to keep that cost of sale within that 30% margin, right? As you start to bring in people that are buyers agents, listing agents, whatever that is, if you choose to grow your business to that level, you want to really pay close attention to that number and make sure as you're setting up splits with team members that you're ensuring when you average it all out, the transactions you do personally and the transactions your agents do, you're split with the market center, that you're keeping that cost of sale inside that 30% window. And then same with your expenses. If you follow those, then you're allowing it to grow with your business. So as your business gets bigger, the number gets bigger, but the percentage stays the same. Okay. And that'll lead you to a net profit of 40%. On the right-hand side, they give you an example, $10,000 check, obviously 30% cost of sale would be $3,000. Operating expenses would be $3,000, your net would be $4,000. Now, of course, we're going to take what out of that? Taxes. Taking taxes out, okay? Okay. So now we're going to talk about the flow of money. We talked a little bit about it with the bank accounts. So the flow of money, this is how we typically think of it. We make income, we pay our expenses, and then after we pay those expenses, that equals our profit. That is essentially like business 101. That's how a business functions. We generate income, which we're calling revenue. We pay our expenses. What's left over is our profit. What we're going to encourage you to do is flip that script. Okay, so what is on the left-hand side is not wrong, but we're saying flip that script mentally. By that, what we mean is decide what you want your income to be. In order for my income to be that, work backwards. Or I'm sorry, decide what you want your profit to be, and then work backwards in order to have that profit. How much income am I going to generate, and where am I going to have to keep my expenses? So this is taking the model on the left and getting really intentional, because the model on the left says I make money, I pay expenses, and whatever's left is left, and that's my profit. And mathematically, that's correct. But mentally, when you're running a business, we actually want to choose what is the profit I'm aiming at? What is my target? Okay, in order to hit that profit, what does my income have to be? And then what do I have available for expenses? So that when I do generate that income and I pay those expenses, the net profit is the net profit that I intended to create. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it's about getting intentional. Courtney, I think you have a hand up.
Yeah, so I've seen this a couple of times, and it's when we're doing training and stuff, and I'm a new agent, but I don't agree with this, and I'm hoping that you might be able to shed some insight. And I don't agree with it because I feel like your first couple of transactions, you should be focusing on how to do the transactions. Your first year of real estate, I feel like should be kind of making sure, like when you're going to the gym, when you're learning how to lift weights, you go slow and steady, you learn the habits, the motions, and trying to get the heaviest amount as quick as possible doesn't make sense. That's
fair in that analogy. Yep. So is your struggle with it that you feel like it has to be an or instead of an and?
Yes.
Okay.
I feel like it's, if you're trying to reach your goal, you're not paying attention to the fundamentals, or you're maybe passing like overlooking some fundamentals, because instead of working on 1, 2, 3 transactions at a time, you're trying to work on, however many at a time.
Okay. Perfect. So I actually love that objection. It's phenomenal. And here's what I would say. Here's the mental shift I would ask you to at least entertain around this, is that it is an and, not an or. Both of those things can happen at the same time, right? So number one, you're deciding what your profit goal is, right? So that's based on what you need to achieve your goals personally, professionally, your level of comfort, the time you have available to commit to the business, all of those things. So that's a choice you get to make. Nobody should be making that choice for you. So that's number one. Number two, done correctly, we are going to decide first 12 months of real estate. This is what my goal is to earn this amount. I'm going to back that into what do I actually have to do and accomplish in order to produce the revenue that's going to generate that profit after expenses. And then you're going to create a GPS around that. Right? A GPS is a one-page business plan. We're going a little off content here, but I think it's a really important question and a very valid one. At all stages of our career, and especially in the beginning of our career, a GPS should really consist of 3 things. So for those of you who don't know what a GPS is, it's also called a 135. What GPS stands for is goal. Let's see if I get this right. Goal, priority, strategy. All right, so what you might do is, let's say the goal is to make $50,000 net profit year one. So that's a goal. Now we go down to priorities. Priorities would be 3 things that are priorities that we need to focus on in order to make that happen. And then underneath those are strategies. Strategies are the things I'm going to do, right? So if you think about this at a high level, the goal is an outcome, the priorities are outcomes, the strategies are the things I'm going to do to create those outcomes. Okay, does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
It's easier with a whiteboard. I would argue to a high degree it never changes, and especially in the beginning of our career, there should be, those priorities are essentially 3 things. It's lead generation, it's systems, and it's education. Whether you call it education, training, coaching, put them all in there, whatever you want to call it. Because what we really need to do is, this is what I want to accomplish. This is what the strategies I'm going to implement to do it. And then the next question becomes, what do I have to go learn in order to be able to do that? Which is where it swings back to what you said. In order to do it and do it effectively, it can be an and, right? So going back to your gym analogy, whatever your goal is in the gym, what you do in the gym is arguably 1/3 of what matters in order to achieve your outcome. In order to achieve the outcome, it's what you do in the gym, it's what you put in your body, and it's how much rest you give your body. You actually need all 3 of those things, right? It's an and, not an or. If all you do is focus on the lifting, for example, but you don't put the right nutrition into your body, and you also don't give yourself enough rest so your body can rebuild, the outcome you're going to get isn't going to be what you want, right? So you actually need all 3 things. So I would argue it's similar, and argue is not the right word. But I would
No, I get
encourage you to look at it that way, right? Once I know what I want to do, how am I going to do it? And then it's what do I have to learn so that I can go out and do that and do it well. Then it's what systems do I have to put in place to help me do it. Does that help?
Yeah. It does.
For real, or are you just being nice?
No. I'm not being nice. It's not in my makeup. But no, I get it. I think we're saying the same thing, just kind of like you said, it's an and, not an or. So.
Yep. And the other thing I would say too is the best and fastest way to learn, and it's scary, but the best and fastest way to learn is to go do it.
Right.
So if you create that plan and you focus on those 3 things, I think you can do the and it doesn't.
Right. And I think that is something that I've learned also through this Ignite course is that I need to stop learning so much and also like do. I was also in the military. I know you mentioned that, and they make you practice something 600 times before you do it. And so that is my mentality. So, yeah.
Yes, 100%. So yeah, that's a trap. And this goes back to know thyself, right? You have to know, am I a person who charges in haphazardly and creates problems? If you know that, then arguably you've got to slow yourself down there and be like, yes, I want to drive hard, but I need to slow down and make sure I'm learning the things so that the outcome of what I do is good for me, good for the reputation of Keller Williams, good for our clients. If you know you're a person who gets ready to get ready, then you've got to manage that. You've got to push yourself outside of that comfort zone and know that perfect is not an attainable goal. As long as I create an actual plan, this is what I intend to accomplish. Here's the systems I need to implement. Here's what I need to go learn. Then you create a calendar, you put those things in it, you follow that schedule so that it can be and instead of or. But yeah, all very legitimate. So I appreciate you bringing that up. All right, anything else before we keep going?
Quick question, Matt. What time do you plan on breaking? Because people are starting to squirm in their seats.
All right, so why don't we do that now? What do we need? It's 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Just put up 5 or 10. 10, 5, 5. Split the difference. 8 minutes, we'll be back. So I have 10:37, so we'll be back at 10:45. How's that? Cool.
Ay, ay, ay.
So I'm sorry I missed the balance of your discussion at the leadership meeting this morning. I was curious to see what the comments were.
Yeah, it was kind of unfortunate. I mean, that's a 30-minute regularly scheduled meeting.
Yep.
So that's a tough window for that conversation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had to jump right off into this. So I kind of just tried to set the table that, hey, I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can and still hopefully do justice to the conversation. And at 9 o'clock, unfortunately, I'm going to have to jump, but everybody else will still be on the call to keep the dialogue going. So I don't know how much longer afterwards it kept going, but I'm sure it went over. Yeah.
I left at about 5 of 9 to just to get in here so people wouldn't say, oh, he's not showing up, because it didn't look like you were going to get out of there when you thought you would.
Well, I appreciate you doing that.
And then I got a text from Brooke saying, go in and calm the troops down.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to go fill up my water. I will be right back.
Okay.
You can have it. I'm not buying it for it. My mom's living in.
All right, you guys ready to roll? Thumbs up. Cool. All right. All right. So different types of income. This is kind of straightforward, and there's possibly some ahas in here to make sure we bring light to. So different kinds of commission opportunities that exist for us are listing commissions, right? That's when we're helping folks sell their home. Sale commissions, which would be us helping folks find and buy a home. Obviously, oftentimes we have the chance to help them sell and buy. Referral income, right? So that can be both referring outbound, sending somebody to another location and receiving a referral, and then leasing income. So rentals, leases, things of that nature. One thing that I think is important to highlight here is the referral income. I mentioned earlier that when I started my career, I was in a place where I knew pretty much nobody. I had moved to that area. I think it was a few months. It was less than a month after I moved there. I went overseas, and I was overseas for 7 months, came back. So long story short, I just didn't have an opportunity to get to know a lot of people there. It was a new place for me. One opportunity I missed early is when I got in the business, I showed up like we talked about. I had a license, but I didn't know what else to do, and said, okay, what do I do? And they said, well, start with all the people you already know. Call them first. And I said, okay. And I came back a few minutes later and was like, I'm done. What next? And they were like, what? And I'm like, well, I know 11 people. I really wish that person pushed back on me in that moment, because what I was thinking is, I know 11 people here, and this is where I sell real estate. The thing that I didn't do for a good amount of time was be intentional about making sure all of the other people that I did actually know from places that I no longer lived, where I grew up, all of those things. I wasn't purposeful about making sure they knew I was in real estate, because in my head, they don't live where I live, I can't help them, right? So even though I knew referrals was a thing, I was a little slow to pick up on the fact that there's an opportunity there to do two things. One is make sure they end up with a professional agent who's going to serve them at a high level, and two, earn a referral, right? So I missed a lot of income and a lot of opportunity early on because I wasn't purposeful about that. So inside of that referral income piece, I would just encourage you to be thoughtful and purposeful about that. That comes from making sure people, no matter where they live, understand that you can add value to them, be it helping them get a mortgage through Keller Mortgage, refi through Keller Mortgage, or find an agent to help them buy or sell real estate wherever they live, regardless of how far away it is. So think about that. And also, as you're doing classes, going to events, just remember every one of those things that you spend time at are opportunities to build relationships with peers to receive their referrals as well. So just be conscious about that piece, okay? So we're gonna walk through the breakdown of a commission to make sure everybody understands when I do get a commission check, where did it start, what do I end up with, and what's all the stuff in the middle, okay? So how is the commission paid through the office, fees to the broker, we're gonna talk about the company dollar piece, royalties to Keller Williams International, how those commissions are split and what that actually looks like, and just go through some examples quickly, okay? All right, so the components of the commission is the GCI, which again, the GCI is the sale price of the house times the commission, okay? Out of that GCI comes the company dollar. That's our split with our market center. We also pay a royalty. The royalty is what goes to Keller Williams International. That's how they make money and how they pay for all the resources that they provide to us. When those things come out, that is your net check. Okay, so those are all of the pieces of the puzzle that go from the actual commission to what lands in your bank account prior to expenses or any of those things. So just kind of the formula. You've already capped, so we're going to go through some different examples. In this example, this is you are not capped with the market center and you are not capped on royalty. Okay. One of the added advantages we have that's unique to Keller, although it's been copied since, is that there's a maximum amount you can pay your market center and there's a maximum amount you can pay in royalty within your calendar year. So these are all the components when you are not capped on royalty and you are not capped at company dollar. Okay. The second example is you have already capped on royalty and you have not yet capped on company dollar. So company dollar, or I'm sorry, royalty is capped at $3,000. That's the same for all of us. So the 6% that we pay in royalty, that 6% caps at 3,000. So once we've contributed $3,000 in royalty in our calendar year, which goes from our anniversary date to our anniversary date, that goes away, and you don't pay that for the rest of the year until you hit your anniversary date again. Okay. Example 2, you've capped on your royalty, but you have not yet capped on your company dollar, right? So there's an exercise you can go through here in your booklet. If you put in what the average commission is, your average commission, or in your market, if you don't know it, you can just use a number that seems reasonable. It's probably in our market anywhere between $500 and $7,500 for most of our markets is probably a reasonable average commission. It might be a little bit higher than that. But if you put that number in, you can back into, if I got a $5,000 commission, minus 30% is my split with the market center, or 20%, if that's what it is in your market center, then your 6% royalty, which, by the way, the 6% royalty comes off of this first number. So it's 5,000 times 30 or 20% is your company dollar. Then it's 5,000 times 6% is your royalty. You subtract those two things, and that'll give you your net. Okay. Once you're capped on royalty, that piece would go away. And in that scenario, your $5,000 check, and I believe this is a typo, and Steve, you can jump in if I'm wrong, but I think this is a typo. If you're capped on royalty, but you are not yet capped on company dollar, you'd have your $5,000. You would no longer pay royalty. So the only thing you would subtract out is the 20 or 30% split to the market center. And then your net would be the difference. Make sense? So same thing, you can run through that exercise in your booklet to see what your net is on that same check once you're capped on royalty. And then lastly, you've capped on both. You've capped on the royalty, you've capped on your company dollar. You get a $5,000 check, and there is nothing that comes out of that check. You're going to receive $5,000. Okay. The only caveat to that I will add, market center to market center, there are things that are different. So you might have a transaction fee, an E&O fee, something like that that can come out. Those are different market center to market center, so you have to know what that is. So when you get your check, you understand what your check is and what came out of it. But at its simplest form, those are the components of your commission. Does anyone have questions around that?
I've got a comment to share.
Sure.
Let me give a plug for technology. If you're doing green sheets, you have to figure out what your actual paycheck is going to be. If you're doing your commissions through Command, it'll give you a little matrix that shows what you're paying in royalty, what you're paying in company dollar, any other deductions you might throw in there, KW cares, kids counts, etc., and then what your written check is going to be. So it does all the work for you.
Are you gonna give us some examples, like take an average sale price home and do one of these up so we can see for sure?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
let's do this now. So if I keep this screen, you guys should have this. Let's see what page. Find this page inside of your manual. And Steve, if you figure it out faster than me, you can tell them what page that is.
It's 9.
All right, so page 9 of your manual. So let's take a few minutes and actually just do the math. So again, go through all 3 examples. Start with whatever you believe the average commission is in your area. The idea is to understand the components more than the math being specific. But again, you're probably looking anywhere between 5,000 and 8,000 as a reasonable average commission. It might be a little higher depending on where you are. You can use 10,000 if you want to keep the math simple. But just run through and do each one of the examples. Start at number 1. Put your $10,000 commission in. It's going to be that times 20 or 30%, whatever your split is in your market center. Right. So if it's 10% or 20%, it's going to be $2,000. If it's 30%, it's going to be $3,000. Then you're going to do your royalty, which is going to be 6% of the 10,000. So that's going to be 600. Then you're going to subtract from the 10,000 your company dollar, your royalty, and that's going to give you your net. When we go down to example 2, remember there's a typo in this. You're now capped on your royalty, so you're not paying the 6% anymore. So you're going to have your $10,000 check minus your 20 or 30%, whatever that is in your market center. So that's going to be 2,000 or 3,000. And then your net is going to be 7,000 or 8,000. Okay. Then when we get down to number 3, the math is really simple. Whatever that commission is, that is your net. Or what we should say, so we're not creating confusion, is that is your revenue. Does that help, Trevor?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was doing it right.
Yeah.
So basically the way I would do it to make it easy would be, let's say the commission check was 9,000 off an average of 300 in my area. I would multiply that by 74% to give me what I'm getting. That makes sense. That'd be a faster way of doing it, which comes out to the same as taking 20% of that and 6% of that also and subtracting it.
Yes.
Which would come out to 6,660.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm assuming we're taking this off of our split, not the total.
Yeah. So if the commission was 20,000,
right? Yeah, 18.
You're on the buyer side, so you're receiving. That's your. Your is the portion of the commission that you are earning, and then you subtract off of that. Okay. Well, Trevor, yep, go ahead.
When you say now you're on the buyer's side, does it really make a difference if you're on the buyer's or the seller's side?
Love that question. And the short answer is yes. And the only reason I say that is when you're on the buyer side of the transaction, for the most part, and I'm going to put an asterisk on this, for the most part, when you're on the buyer side, your income is being dictated to you. When you're on the list side, you have control of what your compensation is. And the reason I say that is typically what happens is a listing agent goes out and takes a listing, and let's say they take the listing at 5% and they choose to pay out 2.5% to the agent who brings the buyer. That's in MLS, and you know, if I bring the buyer to purchase this home, my commission is going to be, my GCI will be 2.5% of the sale price. Okay. Now, if you're on the listing side of that, you have a choice. You might go in and take that listing at 6%. And now you're receiving 3% and paying out 3%. You may also choose to list it at 6%, keep 3.5% because you have overhead like marketing, and pay out 2.5%. The point is, on the list side, you control the compensation. On the buyer side, predominantly, it's being dictated to you based on whatever they're choosing to share. Okay. Where I say there's an asterisk is you certainly have the ability when you do a buyer broker to say, I work with buyers at 3% commission. Like, you have the ability to make that choice, in which case, if it's a 2.5% commission, the buyer would be responsible to pay the difference. That is a choice you can make. And that's why I put in the asterisk. So that's where it does matter which side you're on the transaction. Does that help, Nina?
Yes, but now I just have a question. So do you, I mean, where do you make that?
Oh, you muted early. Where do you make what?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so now, because I've run into that situation, and you know, where do you have that conversation? Because you know, on one of my, I worked with buyers, and the listing agent said, no, you know, we only pay 2% to the, and this was a and this was a Keller Williams, a different market center, but he said, no, we only pay 2% to the buyer's agent.
Got it. So you have a couple of choices. You can A, accept that. You can B, write an offer and include a contingency that the sellers will pay a 2.5 instead of a 2. This is just a personal opinion. I personally don't like to get my commission entangled in the offer, because what I don't want to see happen is my commission becomes a contingency that might make the seller choose a different.
Yeah, I that's exactly it. Like I didn't want them to use the,
Yes.
the
So
offer because
exactly. Yep. So can you do that? Yes. I personally am not a fan of it for that reason. I don't want my compensation to become the reason a buyer didn't get a home. I personally, if I want to be proactive about controlling my buyer side commission, I personally would rather just have that conversation upfront during the buyer consultation, that this is what I provide in the way of services. This is how I am compensated. And depending on what is being offered as a co-broke, at most, you typically either A, would have to contribute nothing, or B, would have to contribute up to 0.5% of the sale price. And I would make sure I have that dialogue, that script, and make sure that's wrapped around the value that I provide, the services I provide. I personally would rather handle it that way. So again, you're either accepting it, you're including it as a contingency, which I'm generally not a fan of, or you're having that upfront dialogue with your buyer client so that they're prepared for it, that if it happens, this isn't new information to them. I'm also not a fan of, if you don't address that and you have a 3% buyer's side commission in your buyer broker, and you haven't actually addressed what that might look like for them, if the co-broke compensation is less, I'm not a huge fan of addressing that after the fact. My feeling is, for a relationship with that buyer, you should address it up front and or accept what's there. And that's personal.
So have you had that conversation before? Have you actually, I mean, do you have that conversation with your buyers and do you know, compensated? Is this something that you say to them, well, you know, if you know, XYZ, you know, only provides whatever, 2%, whatever you're, you know, less than, is that something that you've had that, you know, have you had that conversation, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yes. And here's like a little bit of strategy about how you can go about that. Number one, we tend to get nervous when we get into compensation conversations and we talk far too much. So don't get nervous. Everybody who provides a service gets paid. So we shouldn't feel bad about that. You go to the doctor, you pay the doctor. You hire a carpenter, you pay the carpenter. So we shouldn't feel weird about the fact that we get compensated. So number one, get comfortable with that. Don't allow discomfort to cause you to talk too much. The way I would present it, it would be as a benefit. So if I'm sitting down with you, Nina, I'm going to go through the process with you. I'm going to educate you on the buying process. I'm going to educate you on how I operate as an agent and how I'm going to help you to make the right decision, negotiate for you, leverage my mortgage and insurance resources to save you money on those things, how I'm going to stay in relationship with you afterwards to make sure if you need contractors for your home, I'm going to be able to have referrals that I know and trust to be able to help you with your home ownership experience after you close, right? I'm going to sell the value proposition. And then we're going to have a compensation conversation. I'm going to explain how it works. Now, by the way, a lot of people don't understand. I will admit, before I was in real estate, I spent a lot of time searching for real estate on my own, primarily because I didn't understand how the agent got paid and nobody explained it to me. So when I finally realized that the majority of the time I'm not personally compensating the agent, I felt like a dummy for all the time, energy, and effort that I was spending trying to search for real estate on my own. I just didn't understand how it worked. I was young. I hadn't bought a home. Well, actually, I did own a home, but it was bought off market. So this was the first time I was shopping in the market. So anyways, I just didn't understand it. The minute somebody explained it to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I've wasted so much time. Why am I not working with a realtor? So once you have that value conversation and you talk about the process and you educate them on that and what it looks like to buy a house and specifically what it looks like to buy a house with you, then you have the compensation conversation. You say, this is how this works. The really cool thing is there is the majority, if not all of my compensation for the services I'm going to provide you are likely going to be covered by the commission that is being offered by the listing agent of the home you choose to buy. There's a possibility that what they are offering might not cover the entire cost, in which case you might be looking at somewhere around a 5% or 1% max of the purchase price that you would actually have to pay. Yet the majority of the time, it ends up covering my fee. Or if you're charging 3 and you know it's 2.5, then you would change that dialogue a little. But you just explain to them how it works, right? So get out of the mindset of you're paying extra and get into the mindset of here's the best part about working with a real estate agent. Most or all of my compensation, you're not going to have to pay. Like that dialogue is like, oh, wow. Like I'm either not going to have to pay it out of pocket or max I'm going to pay 0.5% to 1%. That's awesome. Right. So you
I
just,
like the way you said that. Most or all of my compensation is you're not going to have to cover. So, okay. So just wording it that way, making it more of like a positive instead of saying something like, well, if they don't, you know.
yeah. Yeah. That's where.
Whatever offer agent.
Yeah,
Is
that's where.
buyer's agent.
So,
Okay.
exactly.
So, and then when is that something that you're putting in, like, where are you documenting that?
That's in your buyer broker contract.
Like I haven't seen that at all.
Yeah. So I would reach out to your local market center, your team leader, your productivity coach, whoever your point of contact is in your market center. Find out what they have in the way of their broker training, right? Most of the market centers have some level of like ABCs of real estate where you learn the contracts, when you use them, how you use them, because those are different state to state. That is one piece we don't dive into when we teach Ignite on a regional level because it is different from market to market, and we could get ourselves and you into hot water if we start talking contracts.
Right.
And what happens in Connecticut is different than what happens in Mass, New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island, et cetera. So contact someone in your market center and ask them, what do we have available and where are they on the calendar to get contract training? But
actually, that's something I've ever seen. I haven't seen a contract like that. I've taken the contract classes. But that's good. I will definitely ask that question. I mean, like, I never saw myself like heading into that direction of having that kind of conversation just because I was like, okay, well, it is what it is. So it's never really been brought up except for when in writing the offer that just says, buyer to play or seller to pay, 2.5% whatever commission to me. And then, it's whether or not it gets striked out, and it has been striked out. So
yeah. So A, thank you for bringing up this conversation, and then B, to put a bow on it. Two things. One, the two contracts that are like the most foundational contracts to practicing real estate is your listing agreement and your buyer broker agreement. Your buyer broker agreement is essentially your listing agreement for a buyer. That is your contract that says, I am working with you and you are working with me. You shouldn't be working with a buyer without one of those, just like when you list a house, you need a listing contract, right? There's additional addendums and things that go along with all of those. But the two most foundational documents are your buyer broker and your listing agreement. Those are the documents that say seller is working with me, I'm working with seller. Buyer is working with me, I'm working with buyer. So those are the two documents. Everything else is additional addendums and things that go along with those two things. Okay. And then lastly, again, this is just sort of a personal opinion. I believe when it comes to compensation, you deal with it up front or don't deal with it. That's my personal opinion. If you weren't proactive about it, my personal opinion is you accept what's in MLS, because it doesn't feel good to a client to have that conversation once they have found their dream home. That doesn't feel good. So my personal opinion is be intentional about addressing that in the buyer consultation. If for some reason you didn't do it, my opinion is addressing it after the fact is not going to be great for the relationship. It doesn't mean you can't. I'm just not a fan of it. I'd rather deal with it up front so that if it happens, it's a conversation we've already had. Okay.
Okay, last question, I promise. So now in doing a listing, when you're offering the compensation to the buyer's agent. So if, you know, if you agree on 5% with your seller, have you ever done 3%? Isn't it usually just 50-50? Or have you done where it's 3% for you, 2% for the buyer's agent? Like what?
So a couple of things. It is often 50-50. So we sometimes fall in the trap of believing that's what it has to be. And that is not the case. A couple of things to be aware of. Different offices, different market centers have policies around that. So I will tell you in my market center, we have a policy that we pay at least a 2.5% co-broke. So if you're going to take a reduced commission, let's say you go in and say, I'm going to take a commission of 4%. Well, you're paying 2.5%, which means you're not working for 1.5%. And we made that choice. Our ALC voted to make that choice because we did not want to become a discount brokerage. We want to be a full value, full service brokerage and compensate our co-brokes accordingly. So that was a choice we made. Maybe different market center to market center. So find out what the local policy is. And secondly, the answer is no, it does not have to be 50-50. It is very common that somebody might take a 6% listing and pay out 2.5%, keep 3.5% because they have overhead that the buyer side doesn't have. The important thing is that it's in the listing agreement so that the consumer, the seller, is aware of A, what they're paying, and B, how it's getting broken up.
Wow, that's interesting.
Okay.
I just always assumed it was 50%.
Yes. So here's the last thing I'll say about this, unless there's more questions. Number one, commissions are not regulated across the company. And by the way, if they were, that would be illegal, right? So when you're having conversations around commission in a group, you do have to be a little bit careful about the way you have those conversations because it is actually illegal. If all of us were to come together as offices, separate offices, and set a standard across the board of what was going to be charged for commission, that is illegal. We cannot do that. Okay. So just be aware of that. The story I want to share is when I first got into real estate, again, with another company, the first, I think 5 or 6 transactions I did were all listings. The reason they were listings is because, again, I didn't know anybody. So the only thing I could do to get business was to door knock and make calls and do those things. And those things tend to generate listings instead of buyers. So my first 5 or 6 transactions were listings. And a funny thing happened. An agent came to me, one of the top agents, and said, hey, I just heard from so-and-so, which shouldn't have happened, but it is what it is. Came to me and said, I just heard from so-and-so that you're getting 6% listings on all of your listings. And I'm curious, as a new agent, how are you doing that? And this was a top producer. And the funny thing was, I looked at her and I said, is there another number? And she was like, wait a minute. Do you not know that you can choose your commission rate? And I was like, no. I thought it was 6%. I thought that's just what it was. And she was like, that's hilarious. And she was like, no, you can make that decision between 5 and 6% is up to you, or whatever the numbers were. So the funny thing was, when I went out and took all those listings, why do you think I was able to get that commission?
Because you fully believe.
You didn't know any better.
Yes, both right. A, I didn't know any better, and B, I believed. My belief was I was going to get that commission or I was going to leave without a listing. So I went in believing those were my only 2 choices, and I acted accordingly. And wouldn't you know, I got it every time. Now, here's the funny thing that happened. After I found out, I still got 6% on the majority of my listings. But do you think the 5 started sneaking in there? Right? Still got the majority, but all of a sudden the 5 started sneaking in. Why? I would argue that those ones that did sneak in, if nobody ever told me, I probably still would have got those listings and I would have got them at 6. The difference was there was a tiny little crack in my confidence in that conversation because now I realized there was an option, right? So every now and then somebody snuck through that crack. So the point is, if you're confident in the value you deliver, you make your business decision as to what you believe is the appropriate conversation for the value that you add, and you present that, and it is oftentimes less of an issue than you believe it's going to be. We usually make it an issue because we get uncomfortable when we talk too much. Yeah. Was that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the anatomy of compensation?
You have a question from Trevor Grist.
Okay, go ahead, Trevor.
Okay, so my question is, and I've been hearing this a lot, is in this crazy seller's market, all the agents are saying, oh, don't fight for your extra commission in this market. It's not going to work. Now, if the buyer's agents are working extra hard in this market, then why are they saying that? That confuses me.
Okay, so that sounded like two questions. Is the challenge in fighting for your commission on the list side or the buy side?
On the buyer side. So normally an agent would say, no, I get 3%. And they would, like you said, they would explain that to the client that, if the other agent is only offering 2.5%, I would get the 0.5% from you. Or they can even try to call the other agent and say, hey, listen, I work for 3%. Would you be willing to bump that 2.5 to 3? But they're saying in this seller's market not to do that.
All right, so this is, and Steve, I'm going to invite you into this conversation as well. I have a hard time with that on the buyer side. I believe that you're working harder than you've ever worked before right now. And I don't think it's any harder to get your commission on the buyer side today than it was yesterday. I personally would say that's a limiting belief. On the list side, do you get more downward, do you tend to get more pressure from a seller today around commission when they know that homes are selling in 5 days, 7 days, and the only reason it's taking 5 to 7 days is because you have to filter through all of the multiple offers that are above asking, right? Like when the market is that hot, you do tend to get more pressure about what your commission is. And honestly, it's a business decision. You got to decide that, you know what, in this market, I feel like I'm going to lose more opportunity fighting for that commission on the list side than it's worth. Then you make that business decision. That's yours to make. The other side of that is what value can you deliver? I would argue KW gives you a toolbox that if you present that toolbox well, right, and you can show them why there's added value in working with you, right? What are the things you're going to be able to do? So I'll give you some examples. Keller Mortgage is an example. If you can give them an opportunity to save a tremendous amount of money on their mortgage, that provides them a savings that they can't get somewhere else, right? So now the conversation can be, it sounds like it's super important to you to net as much as you possibly can. Is that fair? Yes. If I can show you a way that you can save that money and just save it in a different way, would you be open to that? Sure. Let me show you how I can do that. Keller Mortgage. Some of us have resources specifically for this market that help sellers to take advantage of the seller market and navigate the buyer market better, right? So there's things that Keller Williams is rolling out. They're being beta tested in different markets, so they're not available everywhere, but some of their concierge services, there's things where they can put up money to make repairs to maximize the value of the home. Some of us have resources available that you could actually buy the consumer's home so that they can make a cash or heavy cash offer, right? Maybe it's cash, maybe it's a significant deposit that they otherwise wouldn't have because the money's tied up in their equity. There's tools and resources that allow you to do that and then turn around and sell their house and give them all their equity back. Like complicated conversation, but the point is if you have tools in your toolbox like that and you can sit down with the seller and say, look, I'd like to show you what's different about working with me as opposed to another agent. Here's who I am, here's what I do, and here's all the tools my company offers to you. It makes it easier and saves you money to buy and sell in this market. Those things can be tools that help you defend that commission, but it's a business choice. Steve, what would you add to that?
Couple things. First of all, you have to evaluate the client. I have clients that, well, all my business so far this year has been either previous clients buying or selling or referrals from previous clients. So I have this one lady that I have gotten 11 deals out of this person. I will not charge her more than 5% to list any of her properties. And matter of fact, you know, it's because I want to keep that relationship going. With buyers, I sit them down at the first meeting and I explain to them, you know, yes, the commission is paid by the seller. However, some selling agents are going to try to shortchange. So I want a minimum of 2.5%. If they're only offering 2%, you'll have to bring the other 0.5%. If we go to a FSBO and the FSBO will not pay a commission, you will be responsible for having that commission. As Matt had said earlier, spell that all out to them right up front. Let them know that, you know, this is how everybody works. You know, but it's still, you know, it's a case-by-case judgment call. If you got a person that you know you're going to be getting more business from this person, you're going to cut them some slack. And yes, in this market, you're going to make a lot more money, but you know, in the past, maybe I'd make offers on 3 houses for buyers. Now I'm making offers on 7 to 10 houses and still getting blown out of the water. So, you know, you really have to evaluate each customer in each transaction.
Yeah, agreed.
Courtney, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Steve. In just a question off of what you just said, is it shortchanging though, if as a seller you have to pay for the photography, the marketing, the, you know, all of those other things if you were taking that extra 0.5% as a seller agent?
I don't charge the seller for the photography. I give them a free 2 hours of staging, depending on what the price point's going to be. I do tell them that if they drop me before 30 days, they will have to pay that photography fee and that staging fee. And that's an addendum to the contract right up front. You know, why should I kill myself getting your house prepped for sale only to have you let me go before I've even had a chance to sell the place? And I've never had any pushback on that. I've never had to collect it, but I've never had anyone say, well, I'm not using you because you're going to make me pay for something if I decide to leave. Now we've got one realtor here in Rhode Island that actually charges to sell your house. He charges you 7.5%. Plus he charges you a $500 marketing fee. Plus he charges you a $500 photography fee. And he only pays 2%. And everybody knows that. And we're always trying to figure out how the hell does he get away with that? We also know that he has very little repeat business because his sellers get so upset with him that they never go back.
Yeah. So those are all, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just one more thing.
Sure.
Going back to what Trevor had asked about how to have those conversations, he mentioned asking the listing agent to increase the buyer's commission, but you can't do that, correct?
You can do anything you want, but let's look at it this way. If I'm selling a house and I'm paying a 2.5% commission, and you come in with an offer saying, I want a 3% commission, and Linda comes in with an offer saying, I'll accept your 2.5% commission, and your offers are fairly close, I'm going to sit my seller down and say, you know, this one's a little bit more, but she wants a bigger commission. This is a little bit less. You're going to net more money.
No, I mean as a buyer's agent. If you're the seller agent and I'm the buyer agent, or listing agent, I'm the buyer agent.
Yep.
And I say, hey, you're only offering 2%. Can you bump that up to 2.5% or 3%? Because I feel I deserve more.
Yeah, good luck.
Well, I'm under the impression that that's illegal. You
No.
can't ask that.
It's not illegal. You can ask for anything you want. What is illegal is if we all sit down and say, we're going to charge 7%, okay? In Massachusetts, it's 7%. In Connecticut, that's price fixing. But for you to go to a listing agent saying, I have a client interested in buying your home, but I want a larger commission, that's fine.
Yeah. Here's what I would add to that. If you're going to take that approach, you really have to have it in your head that you're asking the seller to pay more. Because it is unlikely, especially in this market, that a listing agent is going to say yes, because 9 times out of 10 right now, they have multiple offers. They're probably all over asking. So if I've got one asking for either me to reduce my compensation and or my client to pay more, then that automatically puts your offer at a disadvantage when it's being presented against other offers. So
I'll have to double check on that because I know it's been a really big issue. Maybe it's just a main association of realtors or something like that, because I know on our all partners meetings, it's been like a really big conversation lately that it's you're not allowed to.
Yeah, and those things are state by state, a lot of them, which is why it's really important that you have those conversations with local leadership. Because in some areas, you may be able to have that dialogue about with the listing agent about how they're dividing up compensation. And in another area, the only way you can have that conversation, you're not talking to the listing agent, you're asking the seller to pay more. Right. So that's a conversation definitely to have with local leadership.
And, you know, I might have been confused. That might have been in reference to what he was talking about is, oh, I don't argue my commission with the other agent in this seller's market right now. And I think maybe in a normal market, he does.
Yeah.
So
that
I think
that would make sense.
Yeah, you're probably right on that.
Yeah. Going back to Steve's point, it's situational. And as the market changes, things, what you can and can't do are going to change, right? Look at what our buyers are going through right now. The fact that doing a home inspection puts a buyer at a disadvantage. Like, I mean, that's a thing that historically, if I had a client who did not want to do a home inspection, I had an addendum I made them sign that I advised them to do it. I advised them to talk to an attorney if they're choosing not to do it. They've ignored all my advice and they're moving forward without a home inspection, despite all the advice I've given them. So God forbid down the road, if they discover a major issue, they can't come back and say it's my fault because I've got a document saying I begged and pleaded with you to do a home inspection and you chose not to. Because to buy a home, especially a first-time home buyer without doing that, seemed insane. And now suddenly we're in a market where anything that's not cash closing in 15 days and you can tell us the address on the day of the closing, we're fine. Like, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. So again, it's a very different market right now. It's very unique. So the situation and what makes an offer strong or not strong is very different today than what is normal, right? And this is where conversations at your market center meetings, with your leadership, with your other agents in your market are really important to understand what you can do, what you can't do, and what you should do and what you shouldn't do in today's market.
I have a question.
Yep.
I have a property and it was built in 2017. So it's like 4 years old. Do you think I should push them to do a home inspection on that younger property?
So Steve, I'm going to let you jump in after me as well.
Okay.
I personally don't believe you can ever advise a client not to do a home inspection. I think you need to advise them of the value of a home inspection. And in today's market, you have to advise them of the potential of that weakening their offer, because that's real, right? So our job as advisors, right? So historically, I think we would always advise a client, new construction even, doesn't matter what it is, you do a home inspection.
Especially new construction.
Yeah, 100%. That actually doesn't matter, right? Because things happen. Like I built a house in North Carolina. They closed the walls without running the gas for the fireplace. Yeah, that happened, right? And they all did Jimmy, I thought you put the gas in. No, Tommy was supposed to put they closed the walls with no gas, right? Like stuff happens. So I think home inspections matter just as much on new construction as anything else. Our job is to advise though. Like I also think it would be a disservice if we're not making them aware of the fact that unfortunately in today's market, there are a lot of offers being submitted without home inspections because they're doing everything possible to strengthen their offers. You as a seller or as a buyer, you need to make that decision whether or not that's a risk you're willing to take, buying a home without an inspection. By the way, we could try to do a minimized inspection. We can do an inspection and just know that's the right and safe thing to do. And we might have to make more offers. But it's your choice, but we just have to advise them as to what their options are and the reality of today's market.
You can also make the inspections informational only. You're not going to request repairs from them. It still gives your client the legal right to walk away and say, I want my money, my deposit back if they find something bad. And one of the reasons why you want to at least do that kind of an inspection, I recently had a client that stopped in at an open house in Newport, Rhode Island, on July 4th. Called me, and they're in love with this place. It's a 1-bedroom condo for $400,000. They wanted to buy it. They wanted to waive everything. And I'm like, no, let's do the inspections. And thank God we did, because come to find out, the sun deck was about to cave in on this place. Apparently the brick wall had been leaking for a number of years, and it had rotted all the wood, all the wood in the deck. And that would have been a $35,000 plus repair if it didn't kill the people on the first floor when it caved in. So I much like Matt, if you really don't want to do inspections, you're signing a couple of waivers. You're acknowledging that I urge you to do one and you don't want to do one, and you're indemnifying me against any repercussions from not doing the inspections.
Yeah. I think it's really important. And it's become more important now because it was borderline laughable to even consider a traditional consumer buying a home without a home inspection up until this market.
Yeah.
Like I can count on this hand until this market, how many buyers bought a home without a home inspection through me. And in this market, people are doing it all the time. And it's honestly a little scary. So it's our job to advise them through that. And again, to drive the point home that Steve just drove home, if they're choosing not to do it, there should be some written documentation that they were advised of their options and are choosing to go forward without that home inspection. Because it definitely can come back to bite you.
And
Thank
don't draw up the addendum yourself. Have an attorney do it for you.
Yeah.
Because we are not attorneys, we are realtors.
Yes. So first of all, same as we keep going back to, go to your local leadership. Do we have an addendum like this in our market center already that I should be using? Does the board already have a document like this? Find out if it already exists. If it doesn't, have an attorney drafted, then bring it to your broker, team leader, whoever that person would be in your market center, and say, this was drafted by an attorney. Is there anything I should change, or would you be comfortable with this document? Just make sure the document is squared away, approved, legitimate. And then that provides you with that little bit of extra protection.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. I appreciate that.
All right. Any other questions before we move on?
Are there scripts actually for talking about commission? I just didn't see them in the script book at all, like just to have a point of reference.
I believe there are. Here's what I will tell you. I would try to get you a better answer. I'm under the impression there actually, you know what? There may not be. There may not be, and that might be for the reason that we described before. I would try to get you a better answer to that. One resource that I would always point you to is if you go to mykw.kw.com and go to Connect, which would be click on education, it brings you to Connect. That is all searchable. So if you go there and you type in a word, expired, for sale by owner, like whatever it is you want to learn about, it'll bring up documents, trainings, videos, and things like that. And you'll probably find some resources there.
You can also talk to some of the more senior agents in your office, because they've had these questions before and they have answers that work. Joe Dias, who was one of our former owners, shared this in a class where he said, yes, I charge a 6% commission, 3 and 3. And then he has this whole line of, if you bring in the buyer, I charge 5%. If it's an unrepresented buyer, I charge 5%. And it goes, and it was a pretty simple little discussion. And I've used it many times, and it's like, oh, okay, no, that's fine, great. They're going to give me a discount if A, B, and C happens. A, B, and C never happens, but they think that it's there.
Yeah. So that's a really great point. As you go through the process of learning and like developing your own scripts, dialogue systems, all these things, what I would encourage you to do, both on the buyer side and the list side, first think about what are the objections I believe could come up, and how do I address those before they even come up. So what Steve just described is exactly what I did as an agent. 6% commission. If this happens, it'll be 5. If this happens, it'll be 5. And that just addressed the issue up front, right? And then I would move on. There were other things I did because I was doing a lot of expireds. I had which Steve kind of touched on, I had a love us or leave us program, right? And I had an actual like flyer that was printed up. And I would say to them, like, we have a love us or leave us policy. I believe anyone you hire, you should be able to fire, right? I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do for you when you work with me. And if I at any point come up short on that, all I ask is one thing and one thing only. You let me know why I failed you and put it in writing. That way I can learn from it. And if that happens, which by the way, to date it never has, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it never does. But all I ask is that you let me know in writing where I failed you, and I will release you from the contract. The reason I was doing that was twofold. Number one, expireds were worried about getting caught in a contract with an agent that they weren't happy with because it had already happened to them. So I wanted to give them peace of mind around that up front. Number two, I was asking for them to put it in writing because sometimes, right, Miss Smith next door mentions that her son-in-law is looking for a house in the neighborhood, and next thing you know, they want to cancel a contract and do a deal on the side. My philosophy was, if I really didn't fail you, but you're willing to put in writing something that is not true, so you can take advantage of some financial situation, I don't want to be in business with you anyway. So I'll be happy to let you go. So my philosophy was, if it's real, you're going to tell me how I failed. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to figure out how to make sure it didn't happen again. I'm going to take it as a lesson. I'm going to let you out of the contract. If you're actually willing to lie about the service I provided in writing, I'm also very happy to let you out of the contract, because I have no desire in doing business with you or the people you know going forward, because I don't need that in my life. So to me, that was a proactive way to get in front of a potential objection that would show up.
I called my first FSBO the other day, and I have a meeting with them Wednesday, and they're only offering 1% buyer commission. So I was trying to figure out how I'm going to speak with them without getting tongue-tied, because they have probably been burned in the past if they're doing a for sale by owner or something like that.
So I'll give you a really quick dialogue. It's not a silver bullet, but it's a quick dialogue. And the question you ask them is, if I were to bring you a ready, willing, and able buyer who made an acceptable offer on your home, all things considered, is that an offer you would entertain? The key is all things considered. So like when I was calling FSBOs as an agent, I would say, if I were to bring you a buyer, a ready, willing, and able buyer who wanted to make an offer on your property that was acceptable, all things considered, including commission, is that an offer you would entertain? And if they said, well, I'm not paying a commission, I said, no, I understand right now you're not offering a commission. But what I'm saying is, if all things considered, including that commission, you were netting what you wanted to net, is that an offer you would entertain?
Okay.
Right? Because the reality is, if my commission is going to be $5,000 and I bring you an offer that's $5,000 over asking, are you going to tell me you wouldn't take the offer? You're netting what you wanted to net. I'm just not breaking it down that simple. I'm saying all things considered, including the commission. And then if they push back, I just go, do you mind if I explain what I'm trying to say? Sometimes I'm not super articulate. And they'll go, sure, go ahead. And then I explain. And that sometimes helps to get over that hump.
Perfect.
Okay. Anything else? So, I mean, this is all like a little bit bunny trail off the content, but I feel like these are valuable conversations. So I don't mind veering a bit as long as it's helpful for you guys. Okay. All right. Let's circle back here. I have no idea where we are. How's that for honesty? All right. All right. Build your future. Okay. So this is an important exercise. So we're going to lean into this. We're going to talk about how you work backwards. So we took that model that said, revenue, expenses, profit, and we flipped it over. We want to start with our profit goal and work backwards. this is how we do it. And I'm going to ask you guys to go through this exercise. For the sake of simplicity, if you don't really know what your net profit goal is right now, just make one up and use a round number that the math is easy to do. The point right now is to understand the concept and the math and how you work backwards, right? So if you're not sure what that goal is right now, that's okay. Just pick a number that sounds good, work with that number, you'll understand the math, and you can put some thought into what the real number is, and you'll know how to do the math backwards. Okay, can we agree on that? Okay, so what I want you guys to do is write down that number, whatever that number is. If you have the real number, great, write it down. If you're going to pick a number, 50,000, 100,000, 150,000, 200,000, pick your number. Again, the point is to understand the math. And we're going to work backwards. Okay. So you start out with that number at the top. That's your net profit goal. Okay. We're going to take that goal and we're going to divide it by 60%. And we're going to write that number down. Do me a favor as you do this, give me a thumbs up if your camera is on. So I have an idea of pace. Okay. All right. Now you're going to take that number and you are going to divide that number by 40%. When you do that math and you have your answer, give me the thumbs up. I got 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. Now we're going to take that number. We're going to figure out how many homes we would have to sell. Okay. This is going to be different for everybody because it depends. We're going to divide the GCI, the gross commission income, which is the last number we just calculated. We're going to divide that by the average commission in our market. Okay, so that's different for all of us. Okay, if you don't know what it is for you or you don't know what it is for your market, there's a couple things you can do. One, if you have a general idea of what the average sales price is, you can multiply that by 2.5%. You can multiply it by 2.6%. Right. I typically encourage when we're doing this exercise, don't go to 3%, because the reality of your average commission being 3% across the board is low because you don't control all the commissions. You're going to have buyer side commissions that are 2.5. So even if you get 3 on every listing, so don't use 3, you be conservative and you use 2.5 or maybe do 2.6. Okay. So give me a thumbs up when you have your number. Just my average commission that I'm going to use for this exercise is 10,000, 5,000, whatever it is. Give me a thumbs up when you have that number.
So you're saying the average commission in dollars or percent? Like
in dollars.
Okay.
The average commission in my market is 7,500. Is
this
8,500
before or after our splits?
This is GCI. So before splits. This is sale price times commission rate. So again, when you have just that number, 5,000, 6,000, 10,000, whatever you believe the average commission is, just give me a thumbs up so I know you've picked that number. Okay. Now you're going to take that. You're going to divide the gross commission income by that number. Okay, gross commission income is that third number that we calculated. When we divided by 40%, we got that big number. We're going to divide that big number by the average commission. What we should get is how many homes we would have to sell based on the average commission in our area to produce that much gross commission income. So if you guys don't mind, once you've done it, just unmute and give me the number, 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever that number is. Just unmute, say it out loud, and you can mute again.
At the risk of being vulnerable, I don't understand.
Okay, so let me go back to the top. Do you mind if I actually do your numbers?
I would love that.
Okay, perfect. This will be a good example. So what did you pick as a net profit goal?
60,000.
Okay, so now we're going to take 60,000 and we're going to divide it by 60%. Did you do that?
Yep.
Okay, and what did you get?
100,000.
Perfect. Then we're going to take that 100,000 and we're going to divide it by 40%.
And then I got 250,000.
Okay, that's 250,000. Now we're going to divide that number by your average commission, which you decided is what?
3,000.
What market are you in?
I'm in Maine. I'm in southern Maine.
Okay, what's the average sales price in your market?
I was looking at my sales, and I feel like the average home is going to be somewhere around 325,000.
Okay, so your commission is going to be higher than 3,000. So if you take, let's do 300 to be conservative. We'll take the lower end of what you gave me. So take 300,000 as an average price of a home you're selling, right? So if you multiply that by 2.6, we're just kind of picking that number. That would mean, hold on, 300,000 times 2.6% is $7,800. Okay, so that's your average commission.
Okay.
All right, so write that 7,800 down. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our gross commission income, which I believe yours was 250.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to take 250. We're going to divide it by 7,500.
Okay.
Be 33.3. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when we're doing this exercise, we can't sell 0.3 of a house. If we did, we would need lots of disclosures because it would be weird. So we're always going to round up. So our number would be 34.
What is 34? Is that how many homes that I need to sell a year?
34 would be the number of homes you would have to sell a year.
Okay.
When you're accounting for your cost of sale and your expenses to produce the net profit that you want to produce.
Which would be extremely difficult as a solo agent. By myself with no admin help, no marketing help, no nothing.
Here's what I would say. Is it challenging? Yes. Is it impossible? No. People do it. Lots of people do it. This is what you typically see. And Steve, I'll invite you to commentate on this as well. What I've typically seen is most agents, it's somewhere around 30 transactions closed in a year is where they're starting to pull their hair out. Somewhere around there is where they're working probably pretty close to 7 days a week, long days. And it's different for everyone because we have different skills. Like I have had 2 agents in my office, 3 actually, who have done over 100 transactions a year by themselves. Blows my mind. I am not that guy.
With no help.
With no help, no admin, no nothing. 100 deals, 3 people in my office have done it and do it consistently. Mind blowing to me. But the average that I see, you see people bring in leverage early. But typically what I see is I would say what would be, again, typical, somewhere around 30 transactions. The amount of leads you're chasing, showings you're doing, listings you're taking, just all the follow-up involved, all the work in that. It's usually somewhere around 30 transactions. You're probably hitting red line and you need some leverage. You're bringing leverage into your life. Now, here's the upside. A lot of our market centers, and they're all different, have things like transaction coordination in the market center. They have marketing that you can leverage for your listings. I would strongly encourage you to use those tools as long as you take the time you save and reinvest it into generating more business, right? For a lot of us, when we started our careers, those types of things weren't available. So it was either you do it all until you get to the point where you can go hire a person to do a lot of it for you. There was no middle ground in between. Now you have all these services inside of our market centers, a lot of them, that you can get leverage early at small cost and you only pay for it when you're closing or when you're using it. I would strongly encourage you to use those things and you'll extend out the number of transactions you can do before you have to go out and make a full-time hire. It's a huge, huge asset to have that available. Okay. All right. So back to the math. So we're at, what did we say? 34 transactions. Okay. Now, for simplicity's sake, we know, remember the 30-30-30 model, 30% cost of sale, 30% expenses, 40% profit. For simplicity's sake, we're going to assume everybody here right now is an individual agent. So your cost of sale is going to be your cap and your royalty. So there's two things you can do here. You can use 30%, or if you're an individual agent and you don't envision having other salespeople on your team in the next 12 months, you really can just put your cap and your royalty there. So that would be if you have a $20,000 cap, we all know the royalty is $3,000 no matter what. Anticipated cost of sale would be $23,000. If you have a $25,000 cap, $3,000 royalty, your anticipated cost of sale is going to be $28,000. Okay, then we go down to operating expenses. Operating expenses, you're going to multiply your GCI. So we're going back to gross commission income, right? I think that was 250 for you, Courtney.
Yes.
We're going to multiply that by 30%, which should give you 75,000, I believe.
Wait, you said 250,000.
Yep.
Times, what was it? 75%?
No, times 30%.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, 75,000.
Okay. So you're going to write that down there for your operating expense budget. Okay, so now if you read it backwards, what it's telling you is you have a budget now at that level of production of $75,000 a year. Your cost of sale is going to be what was yours, your cap and your split.
I missed that one. I didn't write down my cost of sale.
Okay. What's the cap in your market center?
For me, it's 11,000 because I'm on a team. I don't know what the solo agent is. Oh no, it's half cap, so it's 22,000.
Okay. All right. So we just inserted a little bit of complication into yours. So you're actually going to be splitting with the market center and your team.
Right.
Math for you is going to be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to remove that for the sake of simplicity right now.
Yeah.
What is your regular market center cap?
It's 22,000, and then the KWRI is 3,000.
Okay, so that number would be 25,000.
Okay.
Now, here's the caveat, because your situation is a little bit more complicated because you're on a team. What I would encourage you to do is go back to whoever your team lead is, your rainmaker, the agent that you work with, and say, hey, I went through this math on Ignite. Will you help me to go through this math based on the team structure? Because there's a couple of things. Your expenses are actually going to be less. And your cost of sale is going to be less. Because if you're on a team, because you're splitting with both the team and the market center, you benefit from a reduced cap, which balances out that math.
So I actually have this, which I just shared with you because it won't let me share with everyone. But this is what I use for, it's my sales tracker. So it goes through all of my commission and splits and stuff like that. But I don't know if that would be helpful to everyone, but this is, well, it wouldn't because you'd have to adjust the numbers, but yeah.
Okay, hold on for 1 second. Nope. Cancel.
Actually, don't share that publicly because I think that I just gave it to you with all of my info on it.
Yeah, I'm not going to share that.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. And give me 1 second here. Bear with me for a minute here. Okay. All right. So we just ran through it with Courtney. Let's do a fast example here. So in this example, 100,000 is simple math. We're going to divide that by 60%. That gets us to 166,600. Okay, which, by the way, why the 60%? Does anybody know?
I would say your taxes and expenses.
Okay. Steve? Oh, Steve's muted. Oh, okay. I think Steve's muted. Yeah, so what we're doing is we're working backwards to factor in the cost of sale and the expenses that are going to add up, right? So we're starting out by dividing this. We're going to have a 40% net profit. So we take that net, by dividing it by 60%, it tells us what do we have to produce in order for 40% of that to be the $100,000 net. Okay, so we're dividing by that, we get to the 166. Then we're going to divide for our gross commission income by 40%, gets us to the 416. We divide it. In this example, they used 7,500, which means in order to produce this amount of GCI, we're going to have to sell 56 homes. Then we factor in our cap and our royalty. And 30% of this is what our expenses will be. So I would encourage you, you have the booklet. If you want to take a snapshot of this as well, so you have it as a reference. And when you go back, you can work these numbers backwards. Now, here's where meeting with your productivity coach, your TL, again, whoever that person is in your market center, your team lead for Courtney, can be really valuable. Is now that I know this, the next question where you go deeper with this is, okay, if I'm going to close 56 transactions, how many are going to be buy side? Meaning I'm working with a buyer. How many are going to be sell side? Meaning I'm working with a listing. If you said 50-50, you're going to take that 56 and you're going to divide it in half. And there's an exercise that your leadership can walk you through where you now boil this all the way down to how many buyer consultations do I have to have a week and how many listing appointments do I have to have a week in order to achieve this goal. And that's actually where you want to get to, right? It's the idea of, if you've ever heard the expression, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You can look at a big goal and go, oh my gosh, that sounds really overwhelming. When you break it all the way down to, in order to accomplish that, I have to go on 2 listing appointments a week, 1 listing appointment a week, 1 buyer consultation a week. And all of a sudden you look up and go, wow, to make the money I want to make, I have to go on 2 actual appointments a week, or whatever that math is. All of a sudden that feels more doable, number one, and it's more trackable, right? So when we go back to our GPS conversation, now the strategies I'm implementing are what are the things I have to do to make sure I have that 1 listing appointment and that 1 buyer consultation every week, so that those appointments add up to me helping that many buyers and that many sellers, and that becomes what you focus on. Okay, so I would encourage you, again, to go back to your market center, whoever that person is, PCE team leader, team lead, go to them and say, I'd like to take this math and go backwards to how many appointments I have to have, because that's what I want to build my plan around. Steve, I just noticed you unmuted. You want to add to that?
Yeah, sorry. Courtney sent me a link and I kind of fell down into a rat trap. But if you go to the Out Front magazine, which is online now, that has scripts in it. And I was trying to find I've got like too many buttons open on my screen. I couldn't find the unmute button.
Oh, got it. Cool.
So I'm back live now.
Okay. Any questions around that? It is a little confusing the first few times you do it. But again, I would take your workbook, take this screenshot. If you're still struggling with it, find that PC team leader, whoever it is, set up 30 minutes to work this backwards. And take it from here down to that appointment level. That's where it really, really becomes helpful. Right? Because what you're doing, if you've ever read the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, if you can work all the way backwards to the first domino, you realize the things we have to do to knock over a really big domino aren't that big. We just got to knock that first domino over. When you do these exercises and you take it from a big, hairy, audacious goal, which is your net profit, and you go all the way down to, in order to do that, I've got to go on X number of appointments a week. Well, that's your domino. Like, you get up every day and your job is to make sure you find those 2 appointments. And if you do that, you will end up hitting the goal, period, end of story. It becomes that simple. Now the only question is, will you do the activities? And will you invest to do the activities and to learn what you need to learn to make sure you convert those opportunities when they're in front of you? If you do those things, the success will be there. Worst case scenario, it might not show up at the exact schedule, but it'll show up. Right? Sometimes it's time on task over time. Seems like we're working and nothing's happening, and then suddenly all the results show up. So if you stick with that, you will win. Okay, questions? Okay, so I'm going to go over these best practices, and then if it's okay, we'll take the last few minutes for any questions that we have left open. So best practices. Number 1, gain clarity about your big life hopes and dreams. This goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. The dollar amount for most of us doesn't really truly motivate us, even if we think it does. There might be exceptions to the rule, but most of us, it's not the money. It's how the money can change our life, or the amount of choices we have, or the freedom that we have. Like, that's the thing that fires us up. So it's important to spend a little bit of time figuring out, why am I doing what I'm doing beyond just making money? Because that's where our real drive and passion and grit comes from. 2, set your personal and business budgets. Really, really big. I'm going to give you a couple of tidbits really quick on the personal level. The simplest way to figure out how much you're spending, my wife and I did this forever ago. If you don't know, there's 2 things I'll suggest. One is low tech, one is semi-high tech, not really high tech. Low tech, print 90 days of your bank statements and go through and highlight everything that is a debit. Add them up. It's going to give you a total of what you spent for each month, and you have 3 of them. Add them together, divide them. It'll tell you on average over the last 90 days, this is what our spending habits look like. It's not perfect, but it's going to give you a pretty damn good idea of how much money you spend on a monthly basis. Now, the real work comes into leaning into that and going, is that okay? Am I okay spending that much money? By the way, the money that the things I'm spending it on, are those things that are valuable to me, or am I actually wasting money? Goes back to the impulse side, on things I don't really care about, right? And now you can start tightening it up. Tech version of that, mint.com, mint.com, is a service. It's free. You can connect it to your bank accounts and credit cards. It pulls your transactions in, creates like cool pie chart that shows you how much money you spend on different things. It allows you to play some games, like set budgets, set a goal to reduce your grocery budget by 20%, whatever. But it gives you a visual of where your money is actually going. Number 1 thing is awareness, right? The first step towards moving in a better direction financially in our business or our personal life is awareness. We first have to figure out, what are we doing and what do we need to change? Okay. On the business side of things, I will drop a link right before we leave. There is a tool just like that is specifically designed for your real estate business that follows the MREA models. It is a paid tool. That tool is called ReProfit, ReProfet. Does the same things, connects to your bank accounts and credit cards, pulls the transactions in, organizes them into an MREA P&L. In 2 clicks, you can create a budget. You just select the level of production. My goal is to do 2 million, 3 million, 5 million. Pick that, it creates a budget. Tracks for taxes to tell you what your estimated tax liability is. Tracks your cost of sale. There's an app, so you can track everything mobilely. It also tracks your mileage. So at the end of the year, you can print a mileage report or PDF a mileage report, your P&L, send it to your accountant, and be done. Full disclosure, that is my company. I built it, I own it. So full disclosure. The reason I did that is when I used to teach financial classes, there was one area where there wasn't a simple solution for, and this was it. There was no simple answer on how to have a highly functioning business P&L. So me and the top agent in my office decided to build it. If you want to try it, I'll drop a link right before we end. You can cut and paste it and schedule an appointment. You can try it for free for 90 days. They'll onboard you. They'll get you all set up. They'll let you know what the options are afterwards, but it's very inexpensive. It's as much as $39 for the month, as high as $850 for the year, depending on what you sign up for. There's also an introductory package that you can do for $300, I think it's $350 for the year. You get the software and what we call a profit assistant, which is an actual human who works with you to make sure it stays updated and stays clean throughout the year. So you kind of get a software program and essentially kind of like a bookkeeper, a virtual bookkeeper for $350 for the first year. The point is, if you want to check it out, I'll drop the link and they can give you your options to get started, but you can try it for free for 90 days. Set up your business entity. Here's what I would say around that. Don't get too wrapped around the axle about that. It's smart. As soon as you can, you should do it state to state. It is more complicated. In some states, you have to have a broker's license in order to open an LLC and do real estate through it. Find out. If it's complicated, don't get too wrapped around the axle, but if you can do it and do it easily, it should be on your radar as a thing to do sometime in the near future. Down the road, there are some benefits, both liability and from a tax standpoint of operating under an LLC. So find out how hard it is to do in your state. If it's complicated, don't stress about it. Do your thing. Have a plan to do it in the future. If it's easy to do, make sure it's on your radar to do sometime in the near future. Okay. Open your bank accounts. Do that now. Like as soon as you possibly can. Go open a business bank account. Another thing, don't get wrapped around the axle. Just because you call it a business bank account doesn't mean it has to be an actual business account. You can open a checking account and a savings account and use them as business accounts. Same thing. In some places, in order to do that, open those business accounts, if they're technically business accounts, you have to have an LLC, which means you have to have an EIN, and that's all just stupid hurdles that'll get in the way of you separating your business and personal expenses. So easiest way to do it, just go to the bank, say, I need to open a checking account and a business account. I'm going to run my real estate business through it. What do I need to open business accounts? If it's complicated, say, great. I'd like to open another personal bank account, a personal checking account, and just treat them as your business accounts. Make sense?
Are there things that we should be looking for that would help benefit us, like percentage interest or rates, all of those things?
Yes, ask them what they have available. Some of them, like the checking, might be free, or there's a monthly fee, or most banks right now, the costs are pretty low no matter what. The easiest thing to do is go to the bank where you are now and just do it there. And then later you can research. The reason I say that is we can come up with 1,000 reasons to complicate doing things that should be done now. Done is better than perfect. Get it done. And in the future, you can research other banks. I've found most banks, the gap between the cost of doing business with one or the other is very minimal these days. Most banks are pretty competitive. But there's small advantages, like they reimburse ATM fees, or maybe they charge a $25 a month checking fee or an annual fee, but it's usually fairly small money. Okay. Download the MREA chart of accounts and use it. Okay. So if you go to theonething.com, spelled out, you can access resources for all of the books that were written by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. In there is a download for the MREA chart of accounts. The chart of accounts is the P&L. Okay. If you choose to use RE Profit, it's already built in there. Budgets are all in there. If you're not, go download this and figure out how to get it into another system, QuickBooks or whatever you're going to use. But it is important to be following that chart of accounts. It was designed for our business specifically. Okay. Again, tax software, whether it's RE Profit or something else, I believe RE Profit is the simplest solution. That's why I built it. But if you want to use QuickBooks or Quicken, the point is you have to have a system. Candidly, when I started, my system was, which is ridiculous, but it worked. So who cares? It was receipts, and I had lots of envelopes. My chart of accounts was envelopes that said things on it like marketing, this, that, and I just shoved all the receipts in, and once a month I added them all up and I kept a running total for the year. That doesn't really work for the way we transact nowadays. right? Because it's just different. We don't always have a receipt and this and that. But anyways, the point is, as long as the system works, the system is okay, but have a system. So RE Profit, QuickBooks, Excel, but try to have it be a system that is already smart, right? You don't even necessarily have to understand it. It's just doing what it's supposed to be doing, and your understanding of it will develop afterwards. The more it can be automated, the better it is, because the less time it takes, the more likely you are to stay engaged with it. That's why RE Profit is automated, heavily automated, and we provide the profit assist. So just make sure it's a functional system that you're going to stick with. Hire an accountant or a CPA. That should happen now, right? So start talking to people in your office, put it on your Facebook groups inside of your office. Who do you work with? Looking for some CPA. I would encourage you to interview at least 3. There are good ones and there are other ones. I'll leave it at that. So make sure you interview them. Set dates to calculate your estimated tax liability. So this is what I encourage people to do. You should have a financial Friday in your calendar. It might seem like a lot, but minimum of once a week, you have a tiny block of time to look at your finances. That's opening your bank accounts, looking at your balances, that's looking at your P&L. The point is just to create awareness. And if you do it weekly, it can be 10 or 15 minutes. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but it creates the awareness. So put that in your calendar. And then prepare for the future. This is a whole nother class, but things that need to be on your radar as an independent contractor is insurance. There's multiple different kinds. We should have workers' comp in place as soon as we can. Very inexpensive. We should have health insurance in place as soon as we can. I wish I could say that was inexpensive. We should have life insurance in place as soon as we can. That is inexpensive. And I'm going to be super candid. If you have a family and you are operating without life insurance, you are being irresponsible. And I don't say that to be mean. It is irresponsible to not have life insurance when you have a family. God forbid something happens to us. Now they're dealing with the grief of losing a loved one. And on top of that, their financial world spins out of control. Life insurance at least takes off one of those 2 pressures. It's our responsibility to make sure that's in place for the people we love. And then when we have those things in place, we get to start thinking about the cool stuff, which is how we invest our money. But we got to earn it. We got to protect it. And then we have the right to go invest it. Okay. Questions, comments? How could this class be better? All of those things. What do you guys got? You can't let me talk for this long and have nothing to say to me afterwards. That's super awkward.
Well, this is the second time I've been in this portion, and it's still confusing to me to think that you have to make 416,000 to net 100. And you've got this formula here that takes out the 125 in operating expenses and the 25 for the capping fees. I don't understand where the 166 gross profit goal is taken out of that, how you subtract that out of there.
Yeah. So can I be really, really candid?
Mm-hmm.
I actually think the way it's laid out in this course overcomplicates it. I'm just going to be honest. It's not that different from the way I've always done it in the past, but it is slightly different. And to me, it's a little bit more confusing. So what I would ask you to do is go to your leadership team and ask them to walk you through this exercise. And I think face to face, it's easier to do. And I think they can walk you through it in a way that'll be a little bit less confusing. To be honest with you, I have a slide deck for this class that, because I was kind of jammed up, I had a meeting right before this. I went to pull that up where I've kind of changed that slide a little bit to make it a little bit less confusing. And I just didn't have I didn't have access to that deck today. So it is a little bit confusing. What I hope sunk in is the idea that we've got revenue, we've got net profit, and in between we have cost of sale and expenses. I would encourage you to go back to your leadership team and run through that exercise again and take it all the way down to appointments, because that's where it gets really simple. When we do that, we can forget about all the confusing stuff and go, all I have to remember is my job is to get up every day and make sure I have that number of appointments per week or per month. And if I do that, the rest will show up. Okay, what else?
I think that this put in perspective for me, like if I want to make 60,000 this year, I'm supposed to sell about on average, 30 something homes. I mean, honestly, I don't want to have that many transactions. Like I have a 6-year-old at home, I have a puppy. I'm planning a wedding. Like I don't want to do that much. So for me, I think that puts in perspective that I need to maybe drop that goal down, honestly,
Or
because it's not realistic for me.
or look for a higher price point.
Or look for a higher price point. But I'm not going to turn away a sale because, oh, sorry, you're not over 350. Let me refer you.
Yeah.
100%. However, this is where when we go back to GPS, doing that business plan is super helpful. So I'll use an example, and we're over time. So anybody who needs to jump, just jump. I think it was my second year in real estate. I was doing all the things I was taught to do. I was going on more listing appointments than I ever went on. And what I noticed was I wasn't getting them all anymore. And I looked up and said, okay, what's happening? What had happened is the market had shifted. And I had gone from being the guy showing up, giving them really good news. I want to sell my house for this. And I said, well, great news. I think we can sell it for this. And then I would put their house on the market and spend the next few days negotiating multiple offers. Well, then the market shifted. And suddenly we had the banking crash and all these things that happened. And I was going and delivering bad news. Not only was the house less than what they hoped it was, in many cases, they were upside down in their house. So they were choosing not to sell. So that year I had to sit down and do my business plan from a different place. And there's a couple of things that I built into my business plan. One, I was very young and very blue collar. The people I knew were first-time home buyers who were buying in lower price point towns and cities. So I was selling a lot of houses, but my average sales price was very low, which I'm totally fine doing. But there's a couple strategies that I built into my GPS that year. One was, how do I raise my average sales price? Now, in my particular market, that doesn't mean I'm not going to do business with these people, but how do I do business with other higher price point transactions so I can help raise it up? For me, and this is my own head noise, I was uncomfortable going into those higher price points because I thought they were a different species. Right? Like I thought they spoke a different language and they had like brains that were different than mine, and I was afraid of them, right? Because it wasn't the world I grew up in. So what I decided to do was focus on multifamilies in my market, because what I knew was there were tons of triple deckers. The average sales price of those triple deckers was $250 to $275, and my average sales price at the time was like $150 to $160. Right. So that became a niche that I went after in order to raise that average sales price. I also started focusing on expireds at a higher sales price. Another strategy I implemented is, how do I lead generate for people who need to sell, not want to sell? Because this is a need to sell market, not a want to sell market. So to Steve's point, you can also look at raising your average sales price. Once you have those numbers, and I would encourage you to run through those numbers again, but once you have those numbers and you break it down to appointments, because then it feels more manageable, then look at what are the other dials I could turn that would make it easier for me to get to that end game. That can be a higher average sales price. It could be a higher average commission. Those are all things that we can say, instead of trying to work harder, I'm going to figure out how to work smarter. So going back to the growth plan, if my goal is going to be to have a higher average commission, what do I need to go learn so that I can go out and execute and get those higher commissions, both with my buyers and my sellers? And that's where we move to the learning part of our GPS. Does that help? She's like,
Yeah.
Can I, oh,
she's
go ahead.
candy crushing. She forgot I was talking.
No. There's other people in my office now, so I was muting you. Thank you.
Oh, got it. Okay, Brian.
Yeah, I was going to add that I've owned a couple of companies, and I used to pay people on the gross profit side of things. And what's interesting about this model is that, you go through these calculations, but the bottom line is that whatever your gross profit is based on all the other splits and the other expenses and taxes, whatever you want to say, the net to you is about 25 to 28% of whatever that number is. So that might help people to look at this, because when we did those calculations, and I get that, you still came up with, right, in the $60,000 model that you had, I think the gross was $250,000, right? And you had to sell how many houses to get that? I had to sell 25 houses or so. But anyway, that whatever number you're going to bring in, even if it's 416,000, if you take that, just multiply that by 25 or 28% based on some other factors you're talking about, that's going to be how much you're going to net. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's funny that that's exactly what I paid people on the net profit, or a gross profit, if you would. And that's what it came out to, right? So you're really netting, the net profit is about 28%. Does that help anybody? Instead of,
Yeah.
oh.
And here's another thing, not to muddy the waters. It's just the reality of it. That margin is going to change. The truth of the matter is, as an individual agent, early in your career, you have the ability to run a much higher profit margin. You do. What we're trying to teach is the model long term. So as an individual agent, it is real that you can run a profit margin that is bigger than 40% because you don't have full-time staff. You don't have other agents on your team that are increasing your cost of sale. So, if you go out there and sell 50 homes, you pay your cap, you don't have full-time staff, you're going to be able to operate at a higher margin. The bigger the business gets, the smaller your margin is going to be, but it's a smaller slice of a bigger pie. The truth is, when you get to the top, like 1.5% in the industry and or our company, I will tell you, you would be hard pressed to find one of those individuals with a 40% profit margin. They're 20 to 25%, but it's 20 to 25% of a really big business. So they're still doing extremely well. So as the business grows, that's just typical of businesses. The bigger they get, you should be making more money, but your margin gets smaller. It's a smaller slice of a bigger pie. Okay. Which, by the way, that's also why it's really important to have a P&L and track these numbers, because then you know and understand. I'm currently operating at a 60% margin. Like, that's information you want to know, but you can't know that for your own business unless you're tracking it with a P&L. Okay. Any other comments or questions before we jump? Good to go. I'm going to ask one more time. Was this valuable for you guys? I know, like, the math part of Ignite is usually the one that a lot of people aren't super excited about. Like, we're going to talk about accounting and math, and it's not the sexiest topic. I'll be the first to admit it. Yet it's super, super important. So was it valuable for you guys? Did you learn stuff that you feel like you can go out and implement?
To me,
Your
it was.
link, okay, your link did not get posted.
Oh, it didn't?
No.
Hold on. Oh, you know what I think happened? I think I know what happened. Hold on. Everyone. Here, hold on. Hold up. I got you. Yeah, that got posted directly to one person on accident. So let me fix that. This is everyone. Okay. So that is a scheduling link. So if you do want to try RE Profit, you can try it free for 90 days. That will allow you to schedule the onboarding. They'll set up a call time with you. You'll do a screen share like this. They'll walk through getting it set up, give you a tutorial on the platform, and they'll go through pricing and all that stuff after the 90 days. I don't want to chew up a bunch of time doing that right now, but you can use that link. If you want to get all that information ahead of time before making the decision, just book an appointment. And when you get on that call with them, say, I actually just want to get more information, that's fine too. But you can use that link to check it out or get started. Okay. All right. I think we are good to go. So you can cut and paste that, drop it into your browser. Last chance, comments,
Could
questions?
could you and Steve throw your contact info in the chat real quick?
Mhm.
Sure.
Thank you. This is a great class. I just need to know who to bug when I forget something. No, I'm just kidding.
There you go. You can bug me anytime you want. Steve, I think, is typing.
Yeah, someday I'm gonna learn how to type it. I'm gonna be so damn dangerous on these things.
Hey, Pat, I still think one of the biggest takeaways for me was the aspect of looking at this as your own business, and that setting up and setting up the different accounts, as you mentioned, right?
Yep.
Preparing for taxes and preparing for other expenses like that, because it's not really profit. You can't really spend that. You got to put something aside, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really valuable, because it's too easy to get a commission check and go, wow, this is great. Let's go crazy, right?
Mhm.
It's not all your money, right? Yet,
Delayed gratification. Do the
Yeah.
right thing now. It will pay off significantly in the future.
yeah, it's true.
100%. All right,
Also,
everyone.
one more thing to add: if you're just not disciplined to put the money into the your special account, talk to your MCA, because a lot of market centers will withhold money
Oh,
for taxes and then give you that money at the end of the year. I know our market center does that. You can tell them how much you know, what percentage you want to have withheld from the commission check, and they'll hold it and then give it to you at the end of the year with, give you a check, or even write the check out to, the revenue department or whoever it's going to.
Yep. That is a best case scenario. If your market center doesn't have that, it requires a little bit more discipline. But believe it or not, if you go to irs.gov, it's the craziest thing. The government will take your money whenever you want to give it to them. You could actually set up a link, and every commission you got, you could put it in your bank and go and pay the taxes on that commission that day if you wanted to. They will take your money 365 days out of the year. And then it's out of your hands, and you don't have the option of getting yourself into that trouble. So that's another option. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Steve. All right, folks, I'm going to let you all jump.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.